Over a decade ago, I did a program called The 5 Steps to Nazi Germany. During that program, I explained in detail exactly how white supremacy was going to execute itself in America. And the decade subsequent to that has proven everything I said was correct. That's how you build a white supremacist society. Without chains, without shackles, without chattel slaves. Tonight, I'm doing a different program, but it fleshes out everything I've wanted to say since then. And it's going to be equally, if not more important. Tonight's program is White Supremacy, the Next 500 Years. As you all know, when you take a look around today, what you've seen is the result of the last 500 years of white supremacy. You've seen what it looked like then. What I tell you now is that what you're going to see next is what white supremacy does for the next 500 years. And that's what I'm bearing out for you tonight. We're going to be going into extensive detail about this. And when we get done, I think you're going to find that we have covered all the bases of exactly where this is going. Now, I'm not here to tell you that I have a specific answer for you what to do about it, except the same one. But you cannot fight an enemy if you cannot adequately identify who the enemy is, and more importantly, what the enemy's strategy is. No hotepism, no religiosity, no academic babble, just straight facts and figures and numbers, everything that you need. Now, first, I want to start here. Recently, there was a guy who was on CNN. His name was Vivek Ramaswamy, and he had gotten into a bit of a back and forth with Don Lemon. And as you all heard, Don Lemon, CNN's black LGBT anchor, and many people are saying that as a result of their going back and forth there, Don Lemon said, whatever ethnicity you are. There's a lot of folk who are saying that that was the reason that CNN got rid of him. Of course, that is not true. It was all part of the plan. Don's ticket was punched years ago. He just didn't know it. But he found out. However, this guy, Vivek Ramaswamy, he's got some money and he's running for president, or at least he tells himself he's running for president. But he's not really running for president. He's running against black people, is who he's running against. And what he's doing, what he does, he starts off this video on his YouTube channel, Woke Capitalism Against America. He starts off by giving his version of his life story. And it basically encapsulates literally everything that we've been telling you, everything we've warned you about, all the code words, all the code circumstances, right down the line.
I asked my dad why he chose to come to Ohio, and he...
By the way, first up here, Hillsdale College. This is one of these conservative institutions like Heritage Foundation and the other one, Prager University. It's one of those.
My parents immigrated from India 40 years ago to Southwest Ohio, where I was born. They weren't rich.
All right. There, we're already starting off with the model minority shield here. So he starts off with something that he knows is intellectually dishonest. He starts off by saying, my parents immigrated to America. They weren't rich. Yeah, but that doesn't mean that they were poor. Just because they, in your opinion, and by the way, you only have his word for it, just because they weren't, quote, rich, that doesn't mean that they were poor. So already you realize where this is going here. The propaganda is in full effect for him.
I asked my dad why he chose to come to Ohio, and he said it's because his older sister, who also came from India, lived in Fort Wayne, Indiana. Now that, of course, begged the question of why my aunt had left India all the way to come to Fort Wayne. And we joke around that because it's the only state where the word India is actually contained in the name of the state, Indiana.
So his family has enough money that basically they could all just pack up and leave India. Never mind the fact that it was black people in America. Never mind the fact that it was the descendants of the slaves whose civil rights movement made it possible for them to even be able to do that. They were basically a British colony. Never mind the fact that we made that even possible for them to be able to do that. So his family wasn't struggling. Let's be very clear. His family was well off. They were not struggling. They were just looking for a place they could get a bigger bag. But his family was doing quite well financially, to the point that they could just get up and leave India and be financially perfectly all right wherever they ended up. So no, they were rich enough. My family wasn't rich. They were rich enough.
So that's the story we tell anyway. My dad was a company man himself. He was at GE's Evendale, Ohio plant. He worked there loyally for over 40 years.
Okay, what he doesn't tell you is what his father did for a living there. Because he would make it seem as if his dad was sitting there making widgets. Working 16 hours a day screwing in bolts. That's what he would have you believe. Notice he doesn't say what his father did working at GE. Because then it would debunk we weren't rich. What about your mom? What did she do for a living? Domestic laborer? Housekeeper? Nanny?
And my mom was a geriatric psychiatrist who spent most of her career treating patients with Alzheimer's disease in nursing homes in the Ohio area.
Oh! Well, what do you know? Yeah, his mama wasn't dumb or struggling either. So these were educated, well-skilled, well-paid individuals. They were well-skilled and well-paid over there, and they came here to get a bigger bag. No, they didn't have any inkling of our experience. None whatsoever. These were privileged white people. Now, some of you will consider this to be controversial when I say this at first, or you're going to want to try to push back against it. But oh no, I'm calling him what he is, and all I'm going to say right now is wait for it.
If I learned one thing during my own upbringing, it was that being the odd man out in a crowd isn't always a bad thing. I went to a pretty rough public school through 8th grade, where it wasn't particularly abnormal for a kid to show up to school with a knife.
I went to a particularly rough public school. Sounds like he's trying to say he went where the black kids were because he went to school in Cincinnati. So it sounds like he's throwing out that Howard Stern thing there. Sounds like he's trying to give you code speak for he went to a public school where there were black kids. Now that's what it sounds like to me. He's trying to dog whistle. I went to a public school where there were black kids. Well, why would his privileged parents do that? Why didn't they put him in a private school of some kind? Wait for it.
My parents then switched me to a private Jesuit high school, something that actually shaped my own views, even though I'm a Hindu.
Oh. By the way, if you want to know which high school that was St. Xavier. He went to St. Xavier. So yeah, is it breaking down exactly the way I told you? Or is it breaking down exactly the way I told you? You see, when you let them tell their tale to a white audience that isn't listening critically, then you miss these details. But when we say it here, it's like, hey, wait a minute, this isn't adding up. So yeah, it does add up. Yeah, his parents did have money. Yeah, his parents were affluent. They could pay to send their kid to a private school. And listen to what he said. I got along with it fine, even though I'm Hindu. Got along with it just fine. You can learn a lot from a dummy.
And when I went on to college and I graduated from Harvard in 2007 in biology, I ended up becoming a biotech investor rather than an academic scientist. I went to law school along the way. I went to Yale. I had an itch to study law and political philosophy, but I decided to keep my job at the fund where I worked. And after I finished law school in 2013, I had a new itch. I had an itch to build something rather than just be a passive investor in biotech. So I left my job to start a biotech company.
Yeah, typical American upbringing. Yeah, this is what happens to everybody, right?
I started by developing a drug for Alzheimer's disease. a passion that I'd actually picked up from my mother. But ultimately, that drug failed. It was the first drug we developed. That failure hurt, and it chastened me. But it also taught me that hardship isn't the same thing as victimhood. And eventually, the company thankfully went on to develop important medicines for other diseases that helped a lot of patients in the end, one of which was a drug for prostate cancer. I led the company for 7 years until I stepped down as CEO this January, because I felt even more compelled to help treat a different kind of cancer. It's one that affects the heart of our country. It's not a biological cancer. It's a cultural one. And given the reality of the world that we live in, I wasn't really free to speak about it as the CEO of a high-profile company. So I had to step down so that I could talk about it not as a CEO, but as a citizen. That new disease, that new infection, is spreading across our country like wildfire. It is one that even the best of science is not going to cure. And that new disease is called woke culture. It's the new secular religion in America. And its belief system centers on the idea that your identity is based on your race, your gender, and your sexual orientation, full stop.
So he's telling you the biggest problem out there is woke culture. Not the communist Chinese, not the Russians with their thermonuclear stockpiles, not Al-Qaeda, not COVID. No, it's wokeism. Now, you should know where this is going, because can he define what wokeism is? Now, I know what you think you just heard him say it is, but oh, no. When he starts getting into the details, it's going to get very, very narrow. And he won't be able to use code words when he gets there. He's going to have to say exactly who it is and what it is.
It posits that America is a systemically racist country, and that if you're black, you're inherently disadvantaged, and that if you're white, you're inherently privileged, no matter how much money you have, no matter what your upbringing was.
Okay, now why didn't he say that it says that if you're white, you're advantaged, and if you're not white, then you're inherently disadvantaged? Why didn't he say that? Because, there are other, quote, groups of color and people of color in this society. Why did he specifically point out black people? And by the way, you do have East Indian Americans who also believe that America is a systemically racist society. He doesn't call them out when he has to define woke. He starts out sounding kind of vague, but when he turns around and gets specific, it's like, okay, I have to give an example. Just in case you missed it, let me go ahead and make it very clear who I'm referring to when I say the woke.
It is one that even the best of science is not going to cure. And that new disease is called woke culture. It's the new secular religion in America. And its belief system centers on the idea that your identity is based on your race, your gender, and your sexual orientation, full stop. It posits that America is a systemically racist country, and that if you're black, you're inherently disadvantaged, and that if you're white, you're inherently privileged, no matter how much money you have, no matter what your upbringing was. Your race and gender govern who you are and what thoughts you're allowed to have. That's it. Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley summed it up pretty neatly last year, actually, when she unapologetically declared, "We don't need any more black faces that don't want to be a black voice. We don't need any more brown faces that don't want to be a brown voice," end quote. I'm going to guess that I don't fit her description of what counts as a brown voice.
And you don't consider yourself to be brown, so let's not get into that. But by the way, did you all notice he mentioned your race, your gender, your sexual orientation? You notice he mentioned that, but then he doesn't go back to it. When he gives his examples of what woke is, he only talks about one group of people, black. That's it. When he gives a person who says something that he considers to be wokeism, he mentions a black woman. He doesn't mention the Latinos. He doesn't mention his vice president. He doesn't mention any of them. Just black people. Example after example. black people are what he considers to be the woke disease. Everything else is just an attempt to deflect and camouflage it. But when he's telling you where the center and the focus of it is, he's saying it's black people. Now, folks, I'm focusing on him at the beginning here specifically, but we're going into a wider point. If you all get the wider point of it, give me the fire emoji in the chat room and hit the likes button. It's over 3,000 people here tonight. It's over 3,000 people tonight. Go ahead and hit the likes button for me. Give me the fire emoji in the chat and hit the likes button if you understand what he's really saying here. But he doesn't stop.
Here's the clever part about how this particular virus spreads. If you disagree with any of those claims, then that actually means you're just racist and you don't know it. And the more you resist a woke claim, the more that's seen to validate it. If you say, I'm not racist, that means you are racist. If you say all lives matter, that somehow means that you believe that black lives don't matter. If you capitalize the W in white or fail to capitalize the B in black, you're racist. And there is no greater damnation in modern America than to be labeled a racist. So between pledging fealty to this new religion and being tarred with the scarlet R, everyday Americans are choosing to bend the knee.
Now, isn't that interesting?
It centers on the idea that your identity is based on your race, your gender, and your sexual orientation, full stop.
So he told you that wokeism is the idea that your identity centers on your race, your ethnicity, your race, your gender, and your sexual orientation, full stop. But when he starts preaching what the problems are, the only thing he talks about is black, black, black. Example after example. So he has to put the dog whistle down pretty quickly. Notice what his actual examples he gives are. He isn't saying anything about gender or sexual orientation. You notice that? He's just going on and on, not about race, but about black people. He's just going on and on, but not about sexual orientation, not about gender, and not even really about race, only about black people. Over and over and over again. So you see, it doesn't matter what his parents' attitudes were towards black people, although the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. So if this is the child that they raised, shows me pretty much what they were teaching about black people. His folk came over here. He got mobbed up with the white folk, and the white folk gave him preferential treatment because this was what they were empowering. They were empowering white supremacy.
As the B in black, you're racist. And there is no greater damnation in modern America than to be labeled a racist. So between pledging fealty to this new religion and being tarred with the scarlet R, everyday Americans are choosing to bend the knee. The consequences may be existential for America. This has created a new culture of fear in our country. Fear of losing your job, fear of failing a class at school, fear of becoming a pariah in your own community. And almost every day, somebody new is sacrificed at the altar and excommunicated from civil society for saying the wrong thing. This new culture of fear has completely eroded our culture of free speech in America. A good measure of the health of any democracy, especially American democracy, is the percentage of people who actually feel free to say what they actually think in public. And right now, I am sorry to say that we are doing abysmally on that metric.
He sounds like Tucker Carlson. He sounds like Karl Rove. He sounds exactly like Bill O'Reilly. He sounds exactly like Strom Thurmond. And this is one of the major pillars of the strategy of white supremacy for the next 500 years. They are outsourcing their spokesman. So you'll have technically non-white people, that is non-Caucasian, who are going to be towing the line and carrying the banner. Now, I say technically not white, but in reality, you're actually dealing with white people is what you're dealing with. Now, I'm going to back this up a little bit for my next clip here because it's actually kind of late. But he starts talking about, he seemingly starts talking about geopolitics. Seemingly. But that isn't where it goes.
So both sides are ultimately blinded to the rise of this new 21st century monster that is far more insidious and far more powerful than anything we have seen in the history of our country. Now, I would love to tell you that it doesn't get any worse than that, but it does. It does get worse. There's a new guest who's shown up on the scene and turned this unholy alliance into a threesome. That's the Communist Party of China. They understand this game more deeply than any of us. There is even a Chinese word for wokeness. Baizuo is the word. It literally refers to woke white people in the United States, and they use it to laugh at us.
Let me play that one more time.
That's the Communist Party of China. They understand this game more deeply than any of us. There is even a Chinese word for wokeness. Baizuo is the word. It literally refers to woke white people in the United States, and they use it to laugh at us.
They use it to laugh at us. So for anyone at the beginning of the video, for any of the slow bus kids who didn't get it, for anybody who was thinking, well, Jason, you Kamala Harris told her that you wrong, and I listened to Roland Martin, and Roland Martin said you wrong. Okay. The Black and Brown Coalition. So for anyone who thought that maybe I was incorrect, maybe I was reaching, Jason, you're putting words in his mouth. Let me play the words from his mouth. Let me just play those words from his mouth. Now, I could really stop tonight's video here, but let me tell you, I've got tons. And not about this guy. I'm just starting it with him because I wanted to give you a very specific, personalized example of what the strategy for white supremacy the next 500 years will be and what it looks like. Now that I played for you all the juicy part of it for you to hear, I'm gonna start it over again because he was actually only getting started.
And they use it to laugh at us. And even worse, they understand this game more deeply than any of us. There is even a Chinese word for wokeness. Baizuo is the word. It literally refers to woke white people in the United States, and they use it to laugh at us. And even worse, they're using wokeism as a geopolitical tool to erode our standing on the global stage. And if you have any doubt about that, just look at what they're saying. Last year, when European Union leaders pressed Xi Jinping about China's human rights violations, including locking up over 1 million Uyghurs in concentration camps, who, by the way, Apple uses as slave labor to make their iPhones. I bet they don't tell you that. His first response was that Black Lives Matter shows that the United States is no better. Last month, when China's top diplomat came right here to the Alaska summit, in his opening remarks, he falsely asserts that the United States is slaughtering, that is his word, slaughtering Black Americans, and that he hopes the United States does better on human rights. That would be laughable if it didn't have such serious consequences.
Folks, we're only 13% of the population. He named 3 things that constitute an issue of being the woke disease. He mentioned race, he mentioned gender, he mentioned sexual orientation. Those were the 3 things that he named. And yet, you notice that he just keeps coming back to hammer black people, specifically black people, over and over and over and over again. So what you have is an Indian Dixiecrat, is what you have. Because white supremacy is a religion. And he's telling you that when he went to a Jesuit school, that Jesuit school did not interfere or conflict with his Hindu beliefs. Now he's showing you that the fact that he's from India doesn't conflict him with identifying with and as white supremacist and white. And I'm just showing you clip after this is all from the same video that he posted over and over and over and over again. Telling you what he's really here for and what it's really about. This is white supremacy for the next 500 years. These are the people who will carry the banner for the next 500 years. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to skip forward here about to the end so you can hear one more thing that I think is a good way of capping this off.
The 2020s should be about celebrating what binds us together as a people, the American dream. E pluribus unum, from many, one. The other side might say this is just a load of high-minded drivel because we never lived up to our ideals as a country. And you know what? They have a point.
Actually, no, they don't.
It's true that America isn't perfect. We weren't perfect at our founding. We aren't perfect today. I will venture to say we never will be perfect as a country. But more than any nation in human history, America is as a people, the American dream. E pluribus unum, from many, one. The other side might say this is just a load of high-minded drivel because we never lived up to our ideals as a country. And you know what? They have a point.
Nonsense. The Constitution of the United States was literally written as a document specifically giving rights to white men and by proxy white women and denying even humanity or personhood to black people. So when he talks about the founders and America's founding principles, those founding principles are clearly written in the Constitution. And that got this ship off the ground. So he can't say that, oh, well, we never lived up to the ideals. That's wrong. America did live up to its ideals. That's exactly the problem. The ideal was white supremacy. The ideal was oppression and dehumanization of black people. That was the ideal, and it worked. It was seen through and taken through to fruition. It didn't get stopped. It didn't get interrupted. It didn't get suspended. It went into full effect. So when he tries to sit up here and jump on the bandwagon of, well, we've never lived up to our ideals, wrong. What we're fighting for today is the fact that those were and are the ideals of America. Let me say one more time. They were and are the ideals of America. Protecting and defending white supremacy. It was founded on white supremacy. It is based upon white supremacy. And to this very day, it keeps up the job and the obligation of defending white supremacy. And your very presence here, Mr. Ramaswamy, with your overt anti-black racist attitude is the proof that it is very much alive and well. But I speak about white supremacy. And when we speak about white supremacy, the first thing you have to understand is that white supremacy is global. That's why we have been working so hard as foundationals to get everybody else on code. As the foundation, we've been trying to get everybody else on code to accept the reality that we've already pioneered for decades and centuries, that white supremacy is a global system. And as such, you should look no further than Britain. And oh well, what do you know, Mr. Rishi Sunak? I'm starting to see a pattern here. I'm starting to see a pattern. Well, a member of the British Parliament asked Prime Minister Rishi Sunak about giving an apology for Britain's record on slavery. This is on the other side of the world. Supposedly the place that got rid of slavery first, as if you get a prize for that. We were the first to outlaw brutalizing you on British soil, although we did keep our British colonies because, hell, the money was being made over there, so, yeah. And also, you're going to hear something very familiar when you hear her give her complaint about it. But this is on the other side of the world, and it'll be amazing how identical all of it sounds.
This month marks 23 years since the passing of the late great Bernie Grant, a former member of this House and the founder of the UK reparations movement in the UK. In his last Prime Minister's questions before his death, he asked for an apology to the people of African descent, living and dead, for our country's role in slavery and colonialism. But since then, Prime Ministers and heads of state have only ever expressed sorrow or deep regret. These are not sentiments that are befitting one of the greatest atrocities in human history. And there's been no acknowledgement of the wealth that has been amassed, or the fact that our country took out the largest loan it ever has to pay off the slave owners and not the enslaved.
Did you all hear that?
That our country took out the largest loan it ever has to pay off the slave owners and not the enslaved.
Sound familiar? This is not in America. This is not in Indiana. This is not in Ohio. This is not in New England. This is in England. Sound familiar? Oh yeah, one more thing. Let me go ahead and thread this needle some more. If you'll remember, at the Haitian Revolution, what did the French demand of the people that they were brutalizing? They demanded reparations as the slave owners. Not as the enslaved, but as the slave owners. So this shows you that this is a white doctrine. That everybody, if you had slaves, you're going to get out the game clean. You're going to get out the game with your wealth intact. So they're letting you know that they understand the absolute imperative of making sure that everyone who participated in the slave trade, everyone who profited off of it, could not be bankrupted.
She took out the largest loan it ever has to pay off the slave owners and not the enslaved. So I want to ask the Prime Minister today if he will do what Bernie Grant asked all those years ago, what I have asked and what countless others have asked since, and offer a full and meaningful apology for our country's role in slavery and colonialism, and commit to reparatory justice.
Now, by the way, in case you couldn't tell, she's talking about reparations. So if anyone is wondering whether or not it caught on and whatnot, and she's talking about folk who were in Parliament 20 years ago, but let's be very, very clear. The reparations argument started here with us. We've been stomping on it now for decades. It's catching fire. People are getting more emboldened. They're saying it full-throated. They're coming out with it. Now they're having the courage to be able to say that on the other side of the world. Well, your non-white prime minister here, Mr. Sunak, representing yikes. Well, when she says what she says here, understand, from a fella here who ostensibly you think has no cultural dog in the fight, listen to what he has to say.
Bernie Grant asked all those years ago what I have asked and what countless others have asked since, and offer a full and meaningful apology for our country's role in slavery and colonialism, and commit to reparatory justice.
No, Mr. Speaker. What I think our focus should now be on doing is, of course, understanding our history in all its parts, not running away from it, but right now making sure that we have a society which is inclusive and tolerant of people from all backgrounds. That's something that we on this house, our side of the house, are committed to doing and will continue to deliver. But trying to unpick our history is not the right way forward, and is not something that we will focus our energies on.
Now, just like Mr. Ramaswamy, Mr. Sunak is Indian. He's his parents came to Britain in the 1960s. His parents came to Britain in the 1960s. His parents came in the 1960s. You know, I just couldn't help but notice that so many of these children of these Indian immigrants who finally were allowed to leave from the sandbox in India in the 1960s, so many of them carry a consistent strain of anti-black hostility and aggression. So you see, we're not fighting that first generation. We're fighting the second generation, and they've already had children, which means the third generation is already getting armed as we speak. I told you all we were going to be connecting a lot of dots here tonight. It would be comprehensive, so stick with me because we got a lot of ground to cover. But I wanted to show you that, by the way, white supremacy is global. And when I say that they have outsourced white supremacy, they've outsourced the spokesman for it to other folks. They know who they're bringing in. They know who they're letting in. They know who they are allowing into, quote, positions of, quote, power, even though none of these people ever achieve a position of power. Kamala Harris was the most comedic example of that. So they're showing you it isn't accidental that you keep running into this over and over again, no matter where you go. Now I want to show you one more disgraceful thing. You have this black woman here speaking on behalf of black people for reparations for slavery. And I want to show you all that this is deliberate and conscious.
And commit to reparatory justice.
No, Mr. Speaker. That what I think our focus should now be on doing is, of course, understanding our history in all its parts, not running away from it, but right now making sure that we have a society which is inclusive and tolerant of people from all backgrounds. That's something that we on this House are.
Do you see behind Prime Minister Sunak? Behind him to his left, do you see her?
That we on this House are, side of the House are committed to doing and will continue to do. Side of the House are committed to doing and will side on this House are side. That's something that we on this House are, side of the House are committed to doing. That we on this House are, side of the House are committed to.
Yes, Zaddy, yes. Now, we already know where she comes from, so we ain't even got to get into that. We already know where she's from. And take a look at the chick next to her. That's not an Anglo-Saxon. That certainly does not look like an Anglo-Saxon sitting to her left. So they know the game they're playing. They know what they're doing. They know who they've chosen. They know who they picked. They know who they've allowed. And they are everywhere. Because if you're going to make white supremacy work for the next 500 years, you got to have all your bases covered, and you got to put all the players in the position years and decades ago. Years and decades ago, you got to have all your players and all your pieces in place. You can't just jump up in 2023 and start putting them together. No, you got to start. When black folk were making our moves in the 1960s, these other folks were making their moves to counter us at the exact same time. It should be absolutely no coincidence that when we got a Civil Rights Act, they also passed an Immigration Act. We get civil rights starting to get rolling, and then they say, oh, we better get an Immigration Act together. And I submit to you all that decades later, by the fruit from the tree, now you can see what the strategy was. These are the children of the immigrants that they wrote the Immigration Act for. These are their children. And they knew that this was what it was going to be. Because they engineered it. White supremacy is global and is digging in its heels. The two socioeconomic capitals of the world, New York City and London. And take a look at who's in charge. Jason, that doesn't say a whole lot about who's in charge. Oh, wait a minute now. Because you have to understand, if you're going to make this work, I've shown you the intellectuals. Now we're going to take this to the other end of it. Because you see, every ruler class has to have a labor class who executes the dirty work. And who would that be? Oh, right over here. Now, folks, Wait till you hear this. This is from Fox 5 in New York City. Those illegal aliens who've been getting bussed up there by Texas Governor Greg Abbott and Florida Governor Ron DeSantis and other states. All it took was 20,000 of them to make New York start screaming and squealing. But listen to this story from Fox 5 out of New York. Brace yourselves is all I can tell you.
Since arriving in the city, many asylum seekers are picking up various day jobs in order to make ends meet.
Fox 8 Jessica Formoso caught up with some of them this morning as they waited to be taken to a job site.
I'm stopping this one right here because just so you can be aware, I'm just saying, if visuals tell you anything, just wait till you see the camera switch to the next shot.
Have faith in God and don't give up. Those are the words of Gustavo Tanqueño of Ecuador, who are...
I'm wondering whose Benz he's leaning on. By the way, I couldn't help but notice he's leaning on the Benz. Yeah. I see the license plate. I get that. Them folks get it. Don't think that's an excuse though. Them folks get around. But by the way, I couldn't help but notice what he was leaning on. So life is hard for him. Got it.
Don't give up. Those are the words of Gustavo Tanqueño of Ecuador, who arrived 4 months ago. Every morning since, he stands for hours on the corner of Roosevelt Avenue and 69th Street, along with dozens of migrant day laborers of all ages, waiting for a car to pick them up and take them to a job site. Here we see the situation rather hard, and we can't get a job. He came in pursuit of the American dream, thinking New York would provide him with what he didn't have back at home, a job. If lucky, he gets picked up twice a week, making $150 a day, but he admits there are weeks he goes back empty-handed. Here you really come to learn. You come to learn a trade. You can see the desperation.
Here you come to learn. You come to learn a trade. So in other words, when they talk about black folk being lazy or freeloaders or whatever, this guy's come up here, he doesn't have a skill. He's like, you come to learn a trade. I wonder who's helping.
Once a car pulls up, they all run towards it, hoping today will be the day they will be chosen. We all come to look for work, and sometimes we only get one day, and it's nothing at all, says William Tipan, who arrived 3 months ago, also from Ecuador.
By the way, did y'all notice they all got smartphones, by the way? Did anybody notice they all got smartphones and they all have cell phone service? So yeah, they're struggling so hard. They don't have a job. They don't have anything. I see a bunch of clean shoes and I see a bunch of smartphones with active cell phone service. Clean shoes, smartphones. Somebody has brought them here. And I want you all to understand, tonight we're going to go so deep off into it because it isn't the reasons that you think. I mean, it partially is. Don't get me wrong. It's partially the reasons you think, but it's not the reasons you in total that you think, not the root of it.
Ago, also from Ecuador, he tells us this isn't the American dream he pictured. I thought it wasn't like that. If I knew this, I would have stayed in my own country. In my country, at least, there was some work, very little, but something.
Oh, well, this certainly goes against the narrative that the media in New York tries to portray that, oh, they're just poor migrants and, oh, there's no jobs or whatever. He just literally sat there and told you, oh, man, if I had known it was bummy like this in America, I would have stayed. We had more jobs and more work where I came from. So let me get this straight. He came all the way up here and now the media has to admit, oh, by the way, he's saying that he was better off where he came from. Then why are you imploring so many of them to come here if there isn't the, quote, work and there isn't the jobs? Because we told you, yeah, there's no jobs for y'all like that. We got too many folk up here who can't get jobs now. So why are you still demanding and trying to give them egress to get here? You're flooding the zone. You're over flooding it. You're overcrowding it. Why are you doing that when you know that it's not real? That's New York. Why don't we hop on over to Chicago?
Migrants coming to Chicago overwhelmed city services. Number of migrants coming to Chicago overwhelmed city services. Nonprofits are stepping in to fill the void. WGN's Andrea Medina spoke with one family about the help they're receiving, and she joins us live from the South Side tonight.
She joins us live from the South Side. So in other words, where drunk Uncle Lightfoot, the Democrat Party's chosen apparatchik and henchman, yeah, she's going there on the black side of town because this is targeted racism. And they're telling us about what they don't have on the south side of town. Black folk are on the south side of town. They're not on the north side. They're not up there on the north side. They're not taking them up there to Lincoln Yards. They're not taking them out there by the White Sox Stadium. They're not doing that. They're dropping them where black folk are. Right in the middle where black people are, where there's no economy to deal with already. And what I told you all years ago, they're setting them up because you can't make it if you're not subsidized. They got to be subsidized. So now you see at the bottom of the screen, finding housing for migrants. And once again, just like New York City, they grab a Latina. By the way, just like New York City, hell, these two chicks could be sisters. They grab a Latina to go make the argument for them in the middle in Chicago, which is probably the most racially segregated, at least starkly segregated city in America. Go right there where black folk are. She's standing in the middle of black folk to tell us what these other people need to be getting.
Andrea?
Hi, Dina. The Venezuelan mother I spoke with is staying at the shelter behind me in West Englewood. She couldn't be more thankful to be out of her home country and have a roof over her family's head here in Chicago. But while she's only been here for a short time, she's demanding not to be forgotten because she says many in her situation have not received any public assistance benefits and remain in limbo on their next steps.
She hasn't received public assistance, but she's not a member of the public. She's not even a citizen of the country. Public benefits, at least in New York, at least them cats over there, were talking about we want a job. She's like, oh, let me bypass job altogether. Hey, where's my WIC voucher? I just showed up from Venezuela. And shout out to Hugo Chavez. And we have not forgotten Hugo Chavez. But let's be clear here, this is not the kind of help that Venezuela needs. It really isn't.
Because she says many in her situation have not received any public assistance benefits and remain in limbo on their next steps.
Well, there's the person squawking, and she's one among many.
Marlene is part of a recent wave of migrants from Venezuela seeking asylum in the U.S. She arrived to Chicago from Texas with her 5 kids by plane almost a week ago.
She came to Chicago from Texas with not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, 5 kids. Now, I wonder if they're all 5 of hers. I'm wondering if all 5 are hers. But by the way, yeah, she came up here with a gang of kids. A gang. And now that she's touched down, she's like, okay, I need y'all to drop me some benefits.
Wave of migrants from Venezuela seeking asylum in the U.S. She arrived to Chicago from Texas with her 5 kids by plane almost a week ago and is staying at the Olive Branch Mission in West Englewood. She says we're grateful to be staying where we are. We have a bed, food, and have also received coats. But the mother goes on to say living conditions are not ideal for the children. She says we're not in a place where our kids' mental health is prioritized or where they can run around and play. At the same time, the mother adds she feels disconnected.
Weren't you supposed to work this out with your children's father back in Venezuela For all the passport bros who want to tell you about how much more family-oriented women from South America are, they literally standing out here by the dozens. No men in sight. But by the way, next time somebody wants to try to lecture you about how ladylike and traditional values and all that, well, they ain't nothing like them black women in America. Down there, they know about family. They know about family here too. The baby mama said, let me grab all the children and let me go see if there's a tanning for something up there for me on my own.
Prioritize, or where they can run around and play. At the same time, the mother adds she feels disconnected. She says we feel isolated from society. Our kids need psychological help and need to go to school.
Do you think marching them all the way up from South America, do you think that psychologically scarred them, ma'am? What the hell kind of mother are you? She marched her kids through the jungles and the deserts and talked about she's concerned about their mental health and mental well-being. She wasn't concerned about it when she was marching them up through the Rio Grande.
Says we feel isolated from society. Our kids need psychological help and need to go to school. Marlene adds she met with a social worker and expressed her concerns to them, but says she was told to wait. But Marlene is worried the longer she waits, she'll miss out on opportunities. She and other 5 Venezuelan mothers who are staying together have written a letter asking for government assistance like WIC and Medicaid, and most importantly, for their children to have the opportunity to be in a classroom.
Did y'all get that? Now, here's the reason why I'm pointing this out, because what happens is we sit up here and black folk are paved the way that helped other people out. And by the time you get to that second generation, the folks you've helped out, your tether class, your white supremacist buffer classes, by the time you get to that second generation, they telling you they pulled themselves up. They're telling you that their mama worked hard. Their daddy worked hard. They didn't ask for nothing. They weren't given anything. She was literally given bus tickets, plane tickets, a place to live, coats on their backs, free food, free shelter. And now she's like, hey, I need you to hurry up and put me in this middle class. I got 5 kids. I need you to hurry up and put me in the middle class. You know that she's not talking about how to get a job. She's like, hey, we've gone beyond that. Hell, you just need to go ahead and set us up. You need to just go ahead and set us up.
5 Venezuelan mothers who are staying together have written a letter asking for government assistance like WIC and Medicaid, and most importantly, for their children to have the opportunity to be in a classroom. She says we're not moms who are here to look for trouble. We're moms who just want a better future for our children.
You notice now, she didn't say, we're not moms looking for trouble. We're moms looking for a job. You know, she ain't said a damn word about a job. She wants free health care, child care, free schools, free money, free place to live. She ain't said a damn thing about getting up and working. Ma'am, I have a suggestion for you. If the kids need something, you need to go get a job or start an OnlyFans. I'm not sure which one will come first for you, assuming you ain't already got one. But no, if you didn't have a game plan coming up here, that's called child abuse. But you're going to sit up here and come smuggle your way up on the south side of Chicago and then sit up here and tell folk what they need to be doing for you and need to be giving and dropping off. By the way, I could stop there. I won't. I could stop there, but I won't. They're talking about the growing number of Chinese illegal aliens, and it's a little bit outside of what I was talking about here tonight, just a little bit, but I did feel it was necessary to talk about this one thing here because they talked these fellas here about the rates, about what it takes to get there and what they need to do. I want you to listen to what they had to say to them.
Before ending on foot at this barren section of the border where he finally got through. And the migrants we've met, including Kevin, say they aren't paying smugglers. They're able to do it all with information, maps, and advice readily available on Chinese social media.
How much information is out there?
helping people make the same journey that you made?
Oh, they have a lot of information, trust me.
Step by step, it's all there. This is how you get to America.
Yes, of course, step by step.
Chinese social media sites are even giving tips on where to cross. Here in California, it's considered a better bet over Arizona or Texas because of its immigration policies.
This isn't accidental. This is engineered. This is not accidental. It is engineered. Right there on Chinese social media. They're sitting up here saying, by the way, let us tell you exactly how to break into the country.
So just how much is there at the fingertips of people wanting to leave China for the U.S.?
Can you show me the sort of information that's out there online?
没问题。
Producer Arnie Hakela and I met with Zhang, who left his family behind in China.
这是墨西哥的部分的攻略。
Okay, this is detailing out the Mexico portion. You can see the cities are listed here. It even tells you like which buses to take and from where to where.
Zhang took us into chat groups on the Telegram app.
You can't do this in China. You can't look it up in China. Okay, here's the bus to take, and here's the gate to get on, and here's the street to go down. You can't do that if you want to get somewhere in China and you were still in America.
That offer information on everything, where to stay, how to get there, even how much cash they'll need to bring.
The new phenomenon is people are trying to make money from this information. So they're giving a little bits of information out at a time. And if you want more information about particular routes, or if you get further along in your journey, they're going to demand more and more money.
What kind of money are we talking about? What is this information worth?
比如说从墨西哥
At the U.S.-Mexico border, if you want information on where exactly is best to cross, that's going to run between $1,300 and $2,000 US. If you want a guarantee that you won't be apprehended by CBP, that's going to run you about $10,000 to $20,000.
That don't sound like they're struggling. If they can get together 20 grand, that don't sound like struggling. That doesn't sound like struggling. That doesn't sound like struggling. That doesn't sound like they struggling. This sounds engineered. Now, I took you all the way around all of this. I wanted you all to see how they're stacking up the chips, how they started doing it decades ago, so that you can see they put all the bricks in place for white supremacy. You've got your rulership class. You've got your designated labor class coming in here, and all of them spewing the vilest, most vicious and venomous of anti-black racism. They're showing you what they're on here. But tonight, I want to take you further than anyone ever has. Because I want you to understand that you're probably saying to yourselves, but you know, Jason, this is suicide. White society is here. There's a bunch of white folk who are at odds with this. They're against this. Hell, politicians running against it. Don't they understand that this is suicidal for them too? And I want to suggest to you all right here tonight, I'm going to bring you definitive proof that they know what the plan is, they know what they're doing, and it's deliberate. And as far as they're concerned, they're playing 5D chess. Not 3D, not 4-dimensional, 5-dimensional chess. Well, Jason, how can that possibly be? I could say to you many things. I could tell you many things. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you one video. And it'll otherwise seem innocuous, but before the first minute of the video is over, it drops a bombshell that puts everything in its place and lets you know why this is the strategy, and displacing black people is a key part of it, but there's an economic component, and that from here on in, they will be foot to the floor. I want to show you this video from Urban International. Miami's first super tall skyscraper, the Waldorf Astoria Miami, which is under construction. Listen to the first 60 seconds.
Believe it or not, this stack of 9 glass cubes is set to become the tallest building south of New York City and Miami's first super tall skyscraper at 1,049 feet tall and precisely 100 stories. Welcome to the brand new Waldorf Astoria, Miami. The Miami Downtown Development Authority aims to establish Miami as what they call the epicenter of the Americas by 2025. Miami's master plan for the city is to make downtown Miami the business, social, and cultural hub of North and South America. And
let me play that for you all one more time.
The Miami Downtown Development Authority aims to establish Miami as what they call the epicenter of the Americas by 2025. Miami's master plan for the city is to make downtown Miami the business, social, and cultural hub of North and South America. And projects like this are doing just that.
So we start off talking about the Waldorf Astoria under construction in Miami, but this really comes back to that Miami World Center and the plans of the Miami Downtown Development Authority. Now, you heard what he just said, that their goal, and they started this years ago, that their goal was to make Miami the epicenter of the Americas. That is North America and South America. And folks, if you doubt, I've taken the liberty of going to the Miami Downtown Development Authority website. And I want to read this for you here so that you understand how serious they are. 2025 Downtown Miami Master Plan. Folks, not 2055, not 2035, 2025. You got less than 24 months. The goal of this downtown Miami master plan is to connect and maximize the potential of the Central Business District, the Arts and Entertainment District, Brickell, and Miami's celebrated waterfront. Building upon previous plans and studies, this master plan provides specific action-oriented implementation items that will increase the livability of downtown, encourage private sector investment, and ensure the proper investment of public dollars. This master plan will outline a series of projects that support the goal of transforming downtown Miami into the epicenter of the Americas. Not 2055, not 2045, not 2035, in a year and a half. Recommendations should be distinctive and memorable. I think that jigsaw building y'all trying to make down there is memorable enough, let me tell you. Recommendations should be feasible and implementable. This master plan is not intended to be another passive plan or study, but rather a working document that lays out an aggressive course for delivery with catalytic action items that can be launched immediately. So they are letting you know exactly what they're doing here. When you step down here, section number 1 was overview. Section number 2 is status. Miami DDA staff and board of directors are considering an update to the master plan or creating a new strategic plan. Section number 3, becoming the epicenter of the Americas. And when you take a look here on their map, they're showing where Miami is. The literal title of this document, the title of their master plan is Epicenter of the Americas. This is the title of it. Not New York City, not Los Angeles, not Washington, D.C., the nation's capital, Miami, Florida. And it literally is telling you, oh no, we don't want to be the epicenter of America or the economic center of the world. We see ourselves as the epicenter of the Americas. that we're strategically located to have influence not just on the North American continent, but South American. Well, people, here's the problem. You can't put a plan in place like this and be the city of Miami or the state of Florida because state of Florida and Miami don't have any influence in South America. You would have to have, the approval of the federal government. No, you would need the national government to co-sign something like this. You'd have to be on the same page with all of them for the federal government. So let me go ahead and skip down again. By the way, the title of their document, the title of their master plan is Downtown Miami, Epicenter of the Americas. They say right here in the first paragraph that it's the goal of transforming downtown Miami into the epicenter of the Americas. So in other words, to compete with Bangkok, Shanghai, Dubai, all those places you want to go fly around the world to, they want Miami to be the place that you fly into. New York is where you come and drop the money. California is where you come to live the movie star life. Miami is where you come to enter the epicenter of the Americas, representing more than just North America. In other words, they're telling you that we are the representative of more than just the North American continent. But why? Becoming the epicenter of the Americas. Over the next 5 to 10 years, we are striving to complete the remaining goals outlined in our 2025 Downtown Miami Master Plan. From an urban planning perspective, the master plan includes enhancements to community spaces and streets, expansion of our transportation and mobility network, and activation of our public spaces with art, outdoor dining, and green open space. In March of 2016, back in March of 2016, the Miami Downtown Development Authority Board of Directors revisited the 2025 master plan to review the progress and reassessed its main goals. After the review, the board voted to refocus the 5 main goals of the master plan. The updated goals include: number 1, enhance our position as the business epicenter of the Americas. Not New York, Miami. Heighten the experience of arts, culture, and entertainment. Not New Orleans, not Atlanta, Miami. Create great urban public spaces. Foster a great public realm. Promote transit, connectivity, and mobility. Improve quality of life and livability. But number 1, enhance. Notice what they're saying. They didn't say to create. They said to enhance. So what they're telling you is, we're already the business epicenter of the Americas. Already. Folks, this is not Jason Black suppositioning. This is not conspiracy theory. This is not somebody making something up. You can go Google it right now. As a matter of fact, let me do you all a solid. I'll drop the link to it here, right here in the chat room right now. There goes the link for you. Whether you're watching this live or recorded, you can go to their website yourself and see it. That this is the plan. But Jason, why would they be going so whole hog for a plan like this? What's the benefit? What's the goal? What would be spurring this on? Well, there are a number of different reasons, but I'll drop one for you. If white supremacy is to maintain itself for the next 500 years, then it is going to have to tackle global challenges, not local ones. Black people in America are already locked down and boxed down. The only way that your power base would change is if black people get reparations and establish themselves as an economic force. But if you're gonna hold this thing together, you got to realize the rest of the world is trying to aggregate and organize itself as a block, an economic block against you. BRICS, which you all know is which you all know is Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. South Africa, of all the places they could have chosen. Why South Africa? It's not this major economic hub. But why is South Africa a member of it? Because they got plans for the entire continent of Africa, and South Africa is going to be key to executing that for these other places. Now, I want you all to understand how far this goes. I told you I was going to take you deep into this at a level that nobody else has. You are witnessing as the Eastern Hemisphere of the world is organizing itself for socioeconomic and possibly literal military combat against the West. They're already organizing themselves, and with that Brazil part of BRICS, that means that these elements already have influence inside the southern hemisphere of the West. They've already got a foothold in the southern hemisphere of the West, just like America has its footholds in Japan, in Korea, in Vietnam. Well, guess what? These other folks now are putting their toe prints in the southern hemisphere of America. So white supremacy is having to reorganize itself. Because this is the challenges they'll meet. Now, I want to show you all, just in case you didn't understand this, I've heard a lot of people talk about BRICS. I've heard a lot of people pretend that they can talk about BRICS. I've heard a lot of people claim they can talk about BRICS. They say all kinds of things talking about BRICS. But I never hear any of these people who claim to tell y'all that they're the Africanists telling you they're going to educate you about BRICS. You notice I never hear them bring up this story. How many of you remember this story? Let me go ahead and zoom in a little bit for you here. From NPR back in 2020 during the pandemic. How many of you remember this story? It was in the news and then it went away. There is a disputed border in the Himalayas between India and China. You know, the I in BRICS and the C in BRICS. India and China. There's been bloodshed. I'm talking about recently. There's been death. There have been skirmishes and clashes between the Chinese military and the Indian military. There has been death. There have been soldiers. There's been bloodshed. There's been people killed. In this particular incident, it was 20 Indian troops and 4 Chinese. Don't you know that emboldened China? They're telling themselves, hell, 4 of our soldiers could kill 20 of theirs. We can walk right over them. The 2 most populous nations in the world, China and India. 1/3 of the world's global population. And they've already been slugging it out in these disputed areas in Asia. And yet, that isn't preventing them from seeing the need and the necessity and the benefits of building an economic bloc specifically to counter the West in general and the United States in specific. And they are all demonstrating that they have global aspirations. And that includes the rulers of South Africa, the Afrikaners who were not dispossessed, who were not separated from the wealth they stole, and who are still the power brokers who control South Africa. So when you wonder why South Africa, I'm telling you why it is. It is the whites in South Africa and the whites in India. The whites in India. The whites in India. It is the whites in South Africa, the whites in India, the whites in Brazil. And they are all putting themselves into position for what they're going to do for the next 500 years. On both sides of the world. Oh yeah, I'm sorry, the whites in Russia. Can't leave them out, because Russia is no friend to black people. Yeah, I remember Paul Robeson. Russia's no friend to black people. So does it make sense to you now? Does it make sense to you now that with America telling itself that it's staring down the barrel of a world that for the next 500 years is actually reorganizing itself to challenge American white supremacy and replace it with another white supremacy? Does it make sense to you now that America would see an extreme urgency in propping itself up, in gathering strength from wherever it can, to marshal together the genetic legacy wherever they can? Because you see, they won't control anything. All they'll be able to do is submit and contribute their strength to the cause. Jason, what cause? The cause of white supremacy staying in power and staying in control. The leadership class is bringing in reinforcements. And the idea isn't just economic, the idea is political. That you need to establish your control outside of America. And Florida, specifically Miami, culturally speaking, they keep yelling about culture, because Miami, not New York. New York ain't got no stroke in South America. And North America, the United States government is held in very high suspicion in South America. But guess what? Miami, Florida isn't. They make a distinction between Miami, Florida and America. So Miami, Florida has entree and influence and an ability to communicate that these other places don't. And they are showing you now that America now sees it as necessary to put its dime on influence throughout this Western hemisphere altogether. And even for countries that ain't cool on you, if their people are desperate and eager to get to you, then you've got control and influence over them. You can neutralize two birds with one stone. Will it work? Jason, you're laying out a great big hypothesis here. But where's your proof it's true? Where's your proof it works? Where's your proof that the empirical data bears out what you're saying? Very glad you'd ask. For those of you who've forgotten, and you can Google this forever, I like this one from InTheseTimes.com. New study. Now, this was back in 2019, right before the pandemic, but the facts are still the same. New study says the median black family will have zero wealth by 2082. You'll see other articles that show that you'll have zero wealth by 2053. Many people would argue that we have zero wealth today. But they definitely want to make sure that they cement this in concrete forever. And if you're going to cement something like this in concrete forever, long after you're dead, that means you have to have kicked up a tsunami before you got buried in the ground. You have to kick up a tsunami. And I submit to you today, that's exactly what they've done. Now, the article here says, the story of the growing inequality in the United States has many dimensions. There is an overarching story of the last 4 decades of polarizing income, wealth, and opportunity. Well, they're certainly making sure that some of these other folks here get opportunities, whether they want it or not. They're certainly propping them up. Black folk have never received this level of help and assistance, by the way. But the many ways these inequalities manifest depend on people's gender, get the hell out of here, race, age, immigration status, get the double hell out of here, and other experience. Gonna skip down here. It says, wealth is where the past shows up in the present, both in terms of historical advantages and barriers. Measures of wealth, what you own minus what you owe, reflect the multi-generational story of white supremacy in asset building. For example, the median white family now has 41 times more wealth than the median black family and 22 times more wealth than the median Latino family. Y'all don't need no help. Y'all are good. Y'all real good. You're way closer to white folk than we are. You're good. Now, folks, Everybody else doesn't put this in its proper perspective. They always read stories like this and leave it out of its proper perspective. But I'm going to make one sentence and one statement tonight that hopefully will gather everything I've said here tonight, bring it to its conclusion, so it puts all of this in its proper context and perspective. I urge you now to brace yourself for when we get there, because no one you've ever heard will put it in its proper context and articulate it the way I'm about to here in a few moments. These are among our findings in Dreams Deferred, a new study on the racial wealth divide that I co-authored for the Institute for Policy Studies. Overall inequality has grown as wages for almost half of all U.S. workers have been flatlined since the 1970s. This has touched people of all races. Clearly it touched but didn't impact anyone nearly as much as black folk. So that shows you what the hell it's about. Now, this is what I want to bring you to. This is what I want to bring you to. Since the early 1980s, median wealth among black and Latino families has been stalled at less than $10,000. The median black family today owns $3,600, just 2% of the $147,000 of wealth the median white family owns. The median Latino family has assets of $6,600, just 4% of the median white family, and yet they got more than black folk. So that's not accidental. Since 1983, median wealth for all U.S. households declined by 3%, adjusting for inflation. Over the same period, the median black family saw their wealth drop by more than half. Median wealth for all U.S. households fell by 3%, but black folks saw theirs fall by 50%. Don't compare us to Latinos. They getting white folks results. Don't compare us to Chinese. They getting white folks results. Don't compare us to Indians. They're getting white folks results. We are in a class by ourselves because unlike these other groups, we have been targeted. Now I take you to the crux of the reason I brought you here tonight. They go on to say, if the trajectory of the past 3 decades continues, by 2050, the median white family will have $174,000 of wealth. Latino median wealth will be $8,600, and black median wealth will head downward to $600. In fact, median black family wealth is on track to reach $0 by 2082. Brothers and sisters from around the world, do you understand what they just said? They just said that white folk have already got 50 times more wealth than you have. That's what they have today. And despite all the things that we mentioned, so-called woke culture, so-called the immigration crisis, the illegal alien crisis, the BRICS crisis, despite all of that, they're telling you that in 30 years, white folks' wealth will increase to 174,000. Their wealth will go up. Our wealth will go down. You never heard anybody tell you that within the context of these conversations that, by the way, these folks have run the numbers. Their white folk are already well ahead of us. And what they're saying is that going into the future, white wealth will only increase. However, black people's wealth will decrease to 0. The legacy of Lee Atwater, the legacy of Strom Thurmond, the legacy of Karl Rove, that you will discuss these topics without having to use the word black, and that it'll affect everybody, but the effect on white people will be minor. The effect on black people will be catastrophic. That white people will be okay, it'll require a little slowdown, but the effect on black people will be utter devastation. And you will do it while black folk can buy more tennis shoes, more cell phones, more sneakers, more shirts, more handbags, and more overpriced housing than ever. And that they have calculated that even in the face of all of that, white people's wealth is actually going to increase. It's actually going to go up. So will Latinos. And while we're dealing with that, as you all know, most Latinos identify as white. So they're going to be actually part of this 174,000. These folks right here are the 8,600. These are the 8,600. That's the 8,600 right there. This is the zero. Not them. This is the zero. No, they're the 80s. The Latinos are the 8,600. Even the brown ones. Even the ones, if they don't identify as white, and many of them do, many of the brown ones do. Oh, they're letting you know, but we're going to be the 8,600. We're not going to be that 600, and damn sure ain't going to be the zero. We're going to be the 8,600. I promised you all tonight that I was going to give you the 720 degrees of analysis you receive nowhere else, that you would have a clear perspective on what white supremacy is planning and doing and has already put the machine and the wheels in motion for the next 500 years of dominance. And the last 500 years, black people could be poor. The next 500 years, wipe you out. You can't be nowhere. The last 500 years, we suppressed you. The next 500 years, elimination. And everybody who goes with the program, everyone who signals that they're on the team, everybody who makes it clear that they ain't gonna rock the boat, they're not gonna cause any problems, they're just looking to improve their position in the white supremacist system, but they have absolutely no interest whatsoever in overthrowing it. All of them are slated to be good. Why, you will get to join us in establishing the empire of the Americas. But you first have to let us know that you are not going to be in league with the only threat to white supremacy. That ever-lingering black presence that threatens to bring the whole damn thing down, because they are the only group who has been historically and currently is against white supremacy. Everybody else is all for it. We're the only group against it. That took me almost an hour and a half, but I think it's been worth your while for me to be able to play prosecuting attorney and lay out the case in its entirety with every detail, so that you understand that we're not going on hyperbole and we're not going on rumor and innuendo. That when you see this happening right here, you know damn well this only helps what's going on in Miami. And that only helps what's going on in Florida, but it will not stay there, because I mentioned in Miami, California is already the 6th largest economy in the world. And what did she sit up here and tell you in their piece here on NBC? That when they come over here, yeah, they looking to see if they can get mobbed up at the border.
The same journey that you made.
Oh, they have a lot of information, trust me.
Social media sites are even giving tips on where to cross. Here in California, it's considered a better bet over Arizona or Texas.
Yeah, these places that want to bolster their economies. And let's be clear, if you're going to build something like this thing in Miami, you're going to build something like this, that's going to require a lot of labor, isn't it? And by the way, the cost on this thing they're talking about is pretty damn cheap, to be totally honest. Let me go ahead and get into that too, so you can find out. They're actually talking the price on it compared to New York or California. The building cost they're actually talking about is actually relatively cheap.
The tallest one, consisting of 360 residential condos and a 5-star hotel with over 200 rooms managed by Hilton. The structure is set to take the shape of 9 spiraling glass cubes in an off-center stack that each serve a unique purpose. Cubes 1 through 3 will have all the hotel space, and cubes 4 through 9 will be exclusive to condo owners, with cube 9 specifically serving as the penthouse collection. The skyscraper.
So this building is built like a stack of cubes. If that ain't classism, what the hell is? And they're telling you that the top cube, that's for the penthouse owners. That's for the folks in their penthouses. This sounds like, damn me, Snowpiercer. That movie Snowpiercer. This building is literally an exercise in classism.
Managed by Hilton, the structure through 3 will have all the hotel space, and cubes 4 through 9 will be exclusive to condo owners, with cube 9 specifically serving as the penthouse collection. The skyscraper is being developed by Graybrook Realty Partners and the well-known PMG, the Property Markets Group. PMG is the same company responsible for a number of high-profile hotel and condo buildings, including Dubai's Burj Al Arab, Echo Brickell, and New York's 111 West 57th Street, aka the skinniest skyscraper in the world. The Waldorf Astoria Hotel and Residences Miami is the product of a collaboration between the Seeger Suarez Architects.
These are the architects who designed this building. Well, it's a collaboration because the designer is actually another fella. But the Seeger Suarez group. So when they were handing out the bids for who's going to design this thing and whose firms are going to get paid for it, yeah, they made sure who was going to get it. And by the way, I don't have a problem with that. I don't have a problem with that. What I'm telling you is that I can go to Atlanta or Detroit and you'll have black people arguing against whether or not they should have these things put aside for black folk. They'll have folks sit up here and argue against why we should set aside these for black folk. Down there in Miami, they ain't having these arguments. They're not having these arguments down there.
Miami is the product of a collaboration between the Seeger Suarez Architects Company and architect Carlos Opt, who noted that the aim was to make an iconic structure that defied the laws of gravity. I think it's safe to say they definitely did that here. By rotating each of the 9 cubes and shifting them off the center of the building, they actually designed this building to have unique views from each cube. The rotation of the cubes also makes the building look taller than it actually is. Nice. Structurally, a slender building this tall requires a central core, and this is to deal with torsion caused.
Now, we can get into some of the details here, but they basically talked about it costs like $1 billion when they get done. So, which is actually pretty damn cheap when you think about it by New York standards. And they also said, because I don't see where, I had it marked in here before, but I don't have it now, where they said it would be 1,500 square feet. That each of the things in there be 1,500. There you go. All right.
From studios all the way up to other breathtaking Miami destinations. Now, if you're looking to purchase here, prices for the Waldorf Astoria condos start at around $1.1 million, from studios all the way up to 4-bed residences. The total sale of the project is expected to exceed $1 billion.
Folks, $1 billion for the tallest building in Miami. You couldn't do that in New York City. It cost you a hell of a lot more. And you're going to pay a lot more. Well, actually, the folks who build the skyscrapers, they don't really pay taxes. So actually, they save money when you get down to it. But as far as the basic building costs and its location and everything like that, it'd be a whole lot more expensive if you were trying to do this in New York or California. It'd be a whole lot more expensive. I know. I've been to the tallest buildings there. Been to World Trade. Been to the Korean Air Building, i.e. the Wilshire Grand. I've been to both of them. You talking about $2 billion a piece. And down there in Miami, like, oh, we're going to have the tallest building and we can whack this one out for only $1 billion. But wait, it gets better.
Residences. The total sale of the project is expected to exceed $1 billion. The average price per square foot of these condos is expected to reach over $1,500. The properties first went on sale in May 2021, with over 70% of the condos being sold in the first 9 months after they were made available. Residences.
That tells you a lot, doesn't it? Now, one more thing. You heard him say that it was going to be
$1,500.
That the price per square foot is $1,500.
The average price per square foot of these condos is expected to reach over $1,500.
Over $1,500. Folks, do you understand that the price per square foot in New York City right now is $1,600? The price per square foot in New York City right now is $1,600. By the way, in the chat room, Golden Gold is going to be calling in when I open up the phone lines here in a few moments. So Golden Gold, very glad you asked that question. We're going to have you call in just a few moments. So moderators, make sure you get his information. They're going to be required to call in, not optional. But by the way, a square foot in Miami, and understand, remember, I taught you in my documentary film 7 a.m., I taught you that every time you build one of these mega structures, it sets off an economic bomb that blows up the housing and property values of everything around it. So, in other words, all the other buildings around this thing are going to start to reach parity. All the other buildings around this thing are going to reach parity. So when this thing goes up, it's going to raise the values of all the square footage of all the surrounding existing buildings. When they come up, everybody come up. When they come up, everybody comes up. And this is just one. The Downtown Development Authority of Miami has approved, at this point right now, they've approved 24 buildings. They haven't approved just one. This is just the one we talking about. They've approved 24 more. And this is just really phase one. They have every intention of Miami looking like Bangkok or Shanghai or Dubai. Every intention. That's where we going. So what I'm telling you is they're not going to build 20 skyscrapers. This is just going to be the first 20. This is just the first 20. The next 20 is going to really get your attention. And Miami, in many ways, mimics Chicago. Black folk are specifically segregated in specific areas, and they're going to get them out the way. You're going to get priced the hell out of here. This is major movement. So if any of you were wondering what's the game plan, what's the goal, and oh yeah, it isn't lost on me that Ron DeSantis, your faux Latino governor in Florida, who's sitting up here yelling about woke all the damn time, has overwhelming support among Latinos in Florida. And it hasn't missed me that these folks sit up here jump up and talking about that, and this all seems to come back to Florida. That Florida's going to set the tone for the way things are going to go down from here on in. It's not lost on me that that's who's going to be setting the tone for it. My job is to make sure that you have all of the intellectual firepower and knowledge and insight that you can possibly have so that you're not relying and groping on rumor and innuendo and your uninformed uncle fresh out the joint. That you have somebody who can show you the specific examples and show you how all the pieces hook together. Buffer classes of individuals brought over here decades ago for the purposes of prepping the groundwork. Because if you're going to destabilize black folk, you got to start early. 5 decades later, the tree is bearing the venomous fruit. And now they have taken up the mantle and the words and the vocabulary of the white supremacists, and they're specifically targeting us, both in America and abroad. They are flooding the zone from the north, the south, the east, and west with your replacement labor class, sending them specifically into black areas, specifically target everywhere you go. Black people are targeted. Black people are targeted. Black people are targeted. Black people are targeted. Every move they make targets us. They have a labor class that will come in, and their job is to make sure that they maintain the status quo. So we've got them at the top, and then you got them at the bottom, and you squeezed out altogether, with the United States government saying, and yes, this is the plan, whereby which we will not only hold on to what we have, but to counter some of these upstarts before we put them all back in their place. Which ultimately is going to happen. Eventually they'll put them back in their place. But before they do, let's go ahead and knock out this hemispherical thing. This gives us the excuse to do it. The reason why I have the Black Channel is so I can go in the long form about these things, so I can connect all the dots so that you leave here fully informed. Now you understand what the vision is. Now you understand how the machinery works and how it's all connected. Now you understand the plan of white supremacy for the next 500 years. However, you might disagree. Therefore, the telephone lines are now open. The number is 646-787-1933. That's 646-787-1933. Your personal access code to the blackest radio program in existence, the only one of its kind on planet Earth today. As always, you are welcome to join us. Want to send a big shout out here to everybody who has contributed to support tonight's program on PayPal, CashApp, Super Chat, Venmo, Black Voltron Reloaded. As always, thank you very much, your brother. We appreciate that. Supporting New Black Media Month. My girl, Shani, thank you very much for your support as well, man. We appreciate that. Thaddeus Jones II and everyone else who has contributed to support tonight's program. We thank you very much here. We're going to take a very brief non-commercial break. When we come back, we'll be taking your phone calls. This is the Black Channel. Revolutionizing healthcare to self-care. E23, making a healthier
Order yours today to experience all the benefits of Ash Kickin' natural body butter. With skin so smooth and soft, you'll thank us for it. Shop Ash Kickin' online. That's ASHKICKIN.com.
Greetings, brothers and sisters. My name is Joe Jackson. I'm a foundational Black American, and I entered the field of IT with the goal of helping the family globally. The industry's been changing, and I've learned a lot. But how did we get here? How do we navigate issues we face in the workplace? How can we get our house in order? Read The Concept and Intricacies of Being Black in IT, now on Amazon, as well as the best-selling Guide to Being Black in IT. Go to beingblackInIT.com.
More threads, a brand owned by a descendant of Black American freedmen, was created to uniquely address Black American history and contributions that have been intentionally hidden and suppressed. Use their apparel and more to learn and share the Black American history of Black inventions, heroes, towns, Black business districts, and more. Sign up and support not only a Black-owned business, but a movement at www.morethread.co.
Hi, this is Brenda Starr, creator of Poetry with a Purpose and author of the book Pressed But Not Crushed. Pressed But Not Crushed is an anthology of political poems that address current and historical issues in American descendants of slave population and African American population. The book describes slavery and its residuals, Jim Crow segregation, social depredation, and other relevant issues to American descendants of slaves and African Americans, including the current political climate that does not address our issues.
This is The Black Channel. I am your host, your brother, your humble servant, the Black Authority. Very glad to have you all with us here this evening, and the telephone lines are now open. The number is 646-787-1933. That's 646-787-1933, your personal access code to the Blackest Radio program in existence. I want to thank everyone who's contributed to support tonight's program here as well. So to Tamara, thank you very much for your support. Mr. Richburg, Mr. Baker, and everyone else, thank you very much for supporting the program here tonight. We have been talking about white supremacy for the next 500 years and how that's going to go and what that's going to look like, what they're doing it for, and why it's happening, connecting all the dots of why it is that going forward they'll be foot to the floor. So let's go ahead and get you to weigh in on that. We're going to go ahead and go to the phone lines here. Let me get caller from area code 860. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hi, Jane from Hartford County, Connecticut.
Okay, what is your name?
Hello? Jane from Hartford County, Connecticut.
Hello, Jane. And what's on your mind?
Jane, Jean.
Yes.
Oh, I was just concerned, hearing what's, about to take place. It's good to know ahead of time and all that. I'm just concerned about, my people. What can we do? What solutions other than what we're doing now is, working, and some people are working to get their own businesses and learning all we can from YouTube. What else can we do?
Okay. Let me find out a couple of things here. How long have you been listening to the program?
Oh, tonight?
Well, no, how long have you been a subscriber to our program?
Over a year.
Okay. And what you're telling me is that in the last year, you have not heard us repeatedly articulate the solution.
Well, I guess I'm being kind of like, I don't want to sound it, but kind of like being overwhelmed as we see that it's other nations of people joining in with what we deal with already in this country. It's kind of like, I don't want to say scary, but it's kind of like, overwhelming, and just want to make sure we're covering all bases.
Well, I got to tell you, I appreciate your support and everything, and you're listening in. That smoke alarm chirping is scary to me. That one's frightening because I'm worried you're not going to be able to get out the house if something happens. So a 9-volt battery will change your life. But what I will tell you here is, let me find out here. First of all, where are your people from?
Oh, my parents are from Alabama.
Okay. And you ended up in an odd neighborhood? Are they originally from Alabama?
Connecticut. My parents are from Alabama, yes.
Right. Where are they from? Where's your family from originally?
You mean mother and father?
Well, I'm talking about your ancestors.
Oh, I just know my whole family from Alabama. That's it. African American.
Sounds interesting there. Well, here's what you need to remember. Our job is to make sure that you are properly informed about the situation that you find yourself in, not improperly informed. So what we have to do is keep you up to date as the conditions on the ground change, as things are happening. You don't go into a war zone and they take a picture one time and then tell you, okay, get out there and go win. You have to stay up to date. The battlefield is changing minute by minute. You need to know what's happening.
Right.
You need to know where there are more soldiers aggregating. You need to know where they're moving. You need to know their supply lines. You need to know if they're getting picked up any new allies or any new alliances. You need to know where the troop movements are migrating to. So you need to have up-to-date information. Now, tonight's program is a little bit different because I usually don't go into withering detail into a bunch of different places. So I usually don't go into as many places as I did here tonight, but tonight's program was expansive. So you might be a little bit overwhelmed by the fact that we touched on so many things, but the bottom line is white supremacy is global. And you can't fight a global system if you don't know who the players are and where the players are and how the players are moving. So this is all information that you need. If you're going to start a business, for example, like the Turkey Leg Hut, if you're going to do that, then you got to remember you may be in Houston, Texas, but there's a lot going on there. There's a lot going on.
Mm-hmm.
And you need to be aware of everything that's happening everywhere, not just one place, so that you can be prepared for that, because you got a bunch of black folks who think that they have white allies or brown allies, that's their plan. That's the plan that they have. Well, don't worry. We got a large Indian population in New Jersey, in Chicago. We got a large Indian population. Don't worry. They're minorities like us. The other thing is to make sure that it's clarified to you who the actual ones are, because if you're telling yourself that, well, as long as they're not old, we'll be okay. The young ones don't think like that. The young ones ain't that way. They'll tell you that. And then you'll turn around and get blindsided. Right. They'll sit here and tell you, you got to understand, these folks being given big money. This Ramaswamy dude, he comes from big money. He's doing interviews with Jordan Peterson. He was on Meet the Press earlier today. They asked him about everything except his racist comments. They asked him about transgender. They asked him about everything except his racist comments. They mentioned it at the beginning. Chuck Todd mentioned it at the beginning, never came back to it. Now, young people need to be fully informed so that they recognize the trick bag and the code language when they hear it, so that they look for those things, because he'll sit there and tell you that the issue is being woke. He named 3 things when he started, but I'm like, hey, you better keep listening. When you let him keep talking, you heard him finally narrow it down to who he's really after, and he kept coming back to it and back to it. He mentioned gender twice. He mentioned black folk, half a dozen times or more? Named 3 things, but hammered on only one. And then you come back to Sunak. And then you go these other places. So when you're sitting here asking, what do we do about it? You do what we have told you to do about it, but you need to be informed. You need to know the timelines. You need to know the places. You need to know the dates. We can't stop them from bringing these people in here, but we can damn sure be aware of what's going on, where they're happening at, so that we can make individual plans and individual moves. So if you see them flooding the zone on the south side of Chicago, by us telling the south side of Chicago, hey, they flooding the zone, Lori Lightfoot got kicked out of office, and in part because black folk on the south side started mobilizing when we started reporting that, hey, they're putting them all up in the school there on the south side. They're bringing in the illegals and dropping them in the school as their housing. So you get the information, and I expect you to think strategically about it. Thank you very much for giving us a call tonight. Let me get caller from area code 323. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Hey, good evening, Big Brother Jason Black. This is Brother Elijah calling out of Lake Success, New York.
All right, Brother Elijah, what's on your mind?
Brother, 2 going on 3 years ago, you and Professor Truth did a masterpiece program, and Professor Truth pointed out how the powers that be were going to do what they could do to physically eliminate us, and we had to fight and push back as hard as we can. Now, from tonight's program, we see the game now. They're just, if they can't physically eliminate us, they're trying to financially eliminate us. My question is this: do you predict, okay, if we leave these changing cities, these gentrifying areas, and just keep going to another area, do you believe that these people will keep following us until we wind up in the streets? That's my question.
I mean, my question to you is, when you say, well, hey, if we move to another area, where are you going to move that the white supremacists don't already have control and influence? Where are you going? Give me an example.
Oh, I don't... Big brother, I didn't mean it.
Yeah, I'm
like
saying
that.
I'm saying if you make this suggestion, I'm like, okay, I'm all for it. Tell me where you're going that you're not going to already be that you're not in the middle of the same problem.
Oh, yes, sir. Yeah, please pardon me for that. No, I was just talking about we leave Los Angeles to go to Ontario, or just use that as an example. Or we leave to go to a smaller area.
Go to Canada. Go to Canada, where Jordan Peterson and Steven Crowder are from. So yeah, go there.
No, I understand, big brother.
Totally safe. Totally safe. No problems there at all. Totally safe. Brother, what I'm saying is that you all, like the previous caller here, here's the issue. What you all are articulating is a lack of skill set. As black people, yes, we can't look for, where we going to run? What we going to do? What we going to do? If you're executing the plan the way we've been talking about for over a decade, it isn't about going someplace where there is no adversity and there is no conflict and there is no difficulty. It is about you being built up and prepared to handle whatever you run into wherever you go. That's why I was explaining to Gene. That's if you've been listening for a decade, you know that's why I tell you. I'm not telling you you're going to go somewhere where there's not going to be problems. Everywhere you live in a system of white supremacy. It's a system.
Yes, sir.
It is everywhere. There's nowhere you're going to go run to hide. There's nowhere you're going to go to put distance between you and them. They conquered the world 500 years ago is the point I made to everybody. Christopher Columbus, they conquered it 500 years ago. You ain't running nowhere. There's nowhere to run to. I'm teaching you how to stand, not how to run.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much for giving us a call. Let me get caller from country code 447. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
My name is Adrian. I'm calling from London, England.
All right, Adrian from London. And what's on your mind?
I just was watching your show. I've been a long time listener. I've been trying to get through to you for like at least 10 years. I think you made a few good points about Richie Sunak. When Richie Sunak was coming up in the elections, he made a few presentations about how he loved the English society and what English society stood for, and how he was going to stay loyal to the English values. And I thought that at the time it was very telling of where he was really going to go with his campaign and his, allegiance to white society. And like you said to the previous caller, I believe there's nowhere to run. Obviously, I'm here in England. I'm a child of Jamaican heritage, but I think the dynamics here in England is a lot different from America, because most of the black people, well, basically all of us, are all from all different colonies of the British colonial system, and the Asians are very, very loyal to white supremacy. They have a very large caste system amongst themselves where they can't marry Muslims or they can't marry Hindus, but however they can also marry white people, which I live in London, so there's a very large Asian community here, and that's how they operate. They alienate out the black people out of the jobs. A doctor friend of mine was eliminated from his work by the Indians. They're saying he should just be a rapper. I'm an accountant. We have a lot of these people working amongst us. It's very hard to work with Indians. Strangely enough, it's better to work with the white people than it is the Indians. So I think you made a few good points by pointing out Richie Sunak today, and I'd like to thank you for that.
Well, yeah, we try to stay on top of these things, and you're absolutely right. Anyone who knows the history of India knows that it was a British colony, and really intellectually and culturally it still is. The problem with the Indias of the world and the Jamaicas of the world is that there's a sizable portion of the population that seeks to validate itself as British subjects. They seek to validate themselves as being, part of the system and part of the culture. So Sunak got in his position. You can see why he got there. He's made it very clear. He's not going to upset the status quo. He's here to maintain it. So they didn't choose him because they were bored. They chose him because he let them know, I'm here to maintain the status quo. And he believes it. This was the problem that black folk had with Barack Obama. Black folk in America simply couldn't wrap their heads around the idea that you could have a black person who was a full-throated, fully invested white supremacist acolyte. Black folk couldn't believe, hey, he's identifying racism. He's speaking on it. He's mentioning it here. He's acknowledging it exists, and then turns right around and upholds the status quo. That has been the psychological stumbling block that black folk have had all this time. This is why we're banging the drum, because black folk in America are 13% of the population. Black people in Britain are half that number. And you're seeing,
I think 2%.
You're seeing a dynamic where right now in America, they're letting in the Latinos and the Asians and the white immigrants, but they flying the Haitians back where they came from. And over there in Britain, you're seeing the same thing. They're gathering up the black immigrants, the black illegal aliens. They're gathering them up. They're making plans to do that. But everybody else, we'll be a little hands off with them. But for the black ones, they're doing the same thing they're doing over here in the States. They're filtering them out.
I don't know if you heard about the Windrush scandal that we had over here.
Yes.
Where we had people like my grandfather who came over here and built up the motorway systems that they didn't have at the time, and obviously a lot of the train and rail systems. And then he actually was obviously part of the British colony. He had a British passport, and what they did was just change the rules and said that everyone who came on a British passport from the colonial countries, they no longer are English citizens, and then kicked them out of the country. And there was a massive scandal here. We had hundreds of thousands of people being sent back to Jamaica, Caribbean, African countries. And it works regardless if you're illegal or illegal. That's what I was just trying to say, Jason.
Oh, yeah. I mean, what they are showing you is what we've always warned about. Black people are legal aliens. And this is why it is so important for us to discuss and make sure we bring up the history of these things, because when you start noticing that, hey, Britain, see, the thing that they play in America is there's these lies that get told. Canada's not racist. Australia's not. Why? Racism is an American issue. That's a North American problem. Why? Over here in Britain, we were the first ones to get rid of slavery. And then when you actually go into the details, you realize that's a damn lie. You only got rid of you only outlawed slavery on the British continent. It's not a continent, but in the British nation itself. But that wasn't even where slavery was being practiced. It was being practiced in the colonies, and slavery was still alive and very much well there. So it was this double speak, and you notice in 100, 200 years later, you're still dealing with this double speak. What they're telling you is we have every intention of keeping on doing exactly what we've been doing. We're going to have intellectual arguments with you, but we're not going to make any substantive physical changes unless we're forced to do so. That's why everybody needs to recognize the devil everywhere we go is the same one.
Well, it's funny, Jason, as well. The UK, especially the UK government, consider America one of their colonies. It's a colony that's obviously gone independent, like Australia or Canada. That's how it's viewed over here. It's not viewed like there's a separation. There's more of that cousin relationship, because obviously they were making over there, the slavery was happening. But it was being funded by Britain, funded by Oxford University, funded by all of our institutions over here, Lloyds Bank, Barclays Bank, and millions were being made, and they were living off the profits over here. That's why in America, all of the country, most of the places are named after areas like where I live, Kenton, Harrow, all these other different areas. They make them it's connected all the way through, and the connection has never gone, really.
That's why it's important for us to talk to each other, make sure everybody's on code, make sure everyone understands, make sure everybody gets it, so they're not having stupid arguments, so the children are not sitting up here. Because as you know, brother, in Britain, the first thing them fellas do when they get off the plane or the boat from Nigeria or Jamaican, they're like, hey, where the white women at? Point me, point me straight to it. That's the number one thing they do. Yeah. And then next thing you know, here comes Windrush, and the white chick you was laying up with ain't nowhere to be found.
And you mentioned those two people that were sitting next to the Prime Minister. Both of them are like classic. They're married to white guys, and they're classically on the coon trade, as you would say over there. It's funny.
Yeah, they got that immigrant. They got that immigrant tooth gap. I've told y'all about that before. They got that immigrant tooth gap, brother. I'm telling you, you know it from a mile away. If they got a space in their front teeth, it's like, oh, you gonna be with the bed wenching. Here we go. When you see that immigrant tooth gap in that middle, they got that immigrant gap. Here we go.
But in England, we're all immigrants. That's the one thing, though. We're all from all over there.
Yeah, but you're not all bed wenches, and you're not all coons. That's the difference.
Oh, no.
Not all bed wenches and not all coons. And that's why it's important for us over here and you over there, because it's even more dire. Just understand what they're showing you now is they've always had a way of doing this, and the world has always given Britain this mystique that, oh, well, they talk prim and proper, and so that's some sign of civility. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Chattel slavery was created by whom again? These folks can get vicious when they need to. And what they're showing you now is, by the way, they're gearing up that at some point they're considering that they're going to have to go in on y'all. And what they're doing now is showing that, okay, we getting the engine warmed up. We haven't done this in a while, but yeah, we're getting the engine warmed up to go in on you. And it'll be a, quote, person of color who does it. When you know full damn well he's just a puppet of the folks, them white men standing behind him. He's just their spokesperson. I'll let you have the last word.
Well, Jason, I thank you for ringing the alarm bells and looking out for the B1 community across the world. FBAs, we support them and their reparations, right? Because obviously, once they get what they deserve, I believe it'll be a worldwide effect that will affect all black people across the world. So thank you for that, Jason, and all the good work by the New Black Media.
Thank you very much for giving us a call tonight. We appreciate that. Let me get caller from area code 425. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Hi, good evening. My name's Agnes, and I'm calling from Seattle, Washington. And no, I am not white.
Okay. Agnes from Seattle, what's on your mind?
Hi. I agree with you wholeheartedly. You did an excellent presentation about the buffer classes that are used to wipe us out economically, physically, and everywhere else. The congressional person that represents the area in which I live is an Indian immigrant. So when you talked about Vivek Ramaswamy and so on and so forth, she espouses those type of attitudes. And it's disgusting. It really is.
There's a point to that too, though. If you take a look at it, Nikki Haley in South Carolina, Bobby Jindal was in Louisiana, Vivek Ramaswamy in Ohio. We're not talking about, New Jersey and Michigan and some of these hotbeds. We're talking about from Midwestern and Southern states. And they've been there for decades. So it really shows you when I'm saying that, take a look at how far back this really goes and how far back planted they were. And it's not the first generation that's bearing its fangs. It's the second and third generations that are bearing their fangs.
Absolutely. I actually know Nikki Haley in person. So when you're talking about rabid racist, yeah, she is something else. Something else I want to talk about when you're saying the 500-year plan. Part of the 500-year plan is current House resolution bill, HR 1643, New Deal for New Americans Act of 2023. Look it up. Okay? Just look it up. It is disgusting. It is part of the plan that you just laid out in full in your podcast.
All right.
And,
thank you very much for giving us a call tonight. We appreciate that. Let me get caller from area code 260. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Yeah.
Okay, he's talking to his parole officer. We'll let him get back to that. Caller from area code 469. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
This is Thomas calling from Dallas, Texas.
All right, Thomas from Dallas. What's on your mind?
Yeah, Jason, this broadcast, I mean, you put it right on the money. That Salami guy, I mean, when he started talking about the woke and black people, man, he got real angry. I'm going to have to go back and watch the broadcast again, but that guy got real angry when he started talking about black people, man. And I want to say this, the evil thing about him is that what if he was to take office, man, we're in trouble as black people. I mean, they bringing these people over from these other countries, man, and they hate our guts. And I grew up in Oklahoma City, man. Nobody likes us, man. Even Native Americans don't even like black people. Mexican people don't like black people. I mean, you name it. I can go down the list of different cultures that hate our guts.
So you mean all that bowing and scraping and butt dancing and butt kissing and trying to convince everybody that we the cool friend in the party? You mean to tell me that didn't get us anywhere?
Nowhere. I mean, them old niggas played us to the south. You know what I mean? And another thing, I thought it was against the law to stand around in New York, because when black folks was doing it, they created a law called stop and frisk. But when they bring these clowns over from these different countries, they don't have that problem. I mean, they lock them. Very good
point.
Right in
There's
New York.
Eric Adams, who was a part of Stop and Frisk. But by the way, yeah, ain't no Stop and Frisk in New York for anybody except black folk. There's none for anyone there except us. As usual, they're showing you who they're targeting. It's like, oh, no. We made these laws for you, not for everyone else. Same thing in California. Remember I told y'all a decade ago, the sheriff in Los Angeles, all the rest of y'all got to have insurance except the illegals. Wait a minute, they're not even citizens. They're not even going to be on the soil. They don't have to have car insurance. It'd be a hardship. So, yeah, these folks are letting you know that what we said the whole damn time, it's absolutely true. I said it over a decade ago that they're going to have to get blatant with it. They're going to have to get out in the open with it. And they're out in the open with it now. Because let's be very, very clear. It's going to be, if these folks do, quote, find any work, it's going to be white folk who give it to them. It's going to be white folk. They're showing up in New York City to go see if there's some white folk who need something done for them. They're not showing up to see if Asians need nothing done. Asians ain't going to hire you. They're not showing up to see if black folk need anything. And there's not enough Latinos up there to sustain them, obviously. So they're coming up here to find out, hey, is there anything these white folk need done? And they're being allowed to stand around here and do their thing. But you make a very good point. Yeah, ain't no stop and frisk here.
And another thing too, I thought having all these kids, baby mamas, but they bringing 5 and 10 kids over the border. Now, if you live on the Texas border, coming through the desert with babies, but they allow them to bring all these kids over, and they want WIC, they want welfare, they want. I mean, she don't want, like you said, she don't want a job. She's asking, she done came over and done found out that she wants a plug. What?
And sitting on the south side.
The black taxpayers are paying for it.
And sitting on the south side of Chicago, talking about what they need to do for her. Nobody invited her here. Nobody asked her to be here. But she sure is bringing the entitlement. So that tells you that's engineered. When somebody shows up and got this much entitlement going, it's like, yeah, somebody put a bug in her ear was what happened.
Where's her baby daddy at? He's back over in Guatemala, probably having more kids. Yeah, send them to America. I don't need them. Send them across the border. That's crazy.
Either that or he's the mule. Either that or he's the mule, brother. We gotta take a look at it like that. Either that or he's the mule. You talking about the plug, brother? It goes deeper than that. You either one or the other. You in or you out. You in or you out.
So as black people, we don't run. We're gonna stand here. We're gonna stand our ground. We're gonna fight. There's nowhere to go. You go on this planet that you're not gonna face white supremacy. So I'm standing right here and I'm fighting for my family. And if black people, that's what we got to do. There's nowhere you're gonna run and hide. Stop thinking that bullshit. We got to stand and fight.
Thank you very much for giving us a call tonight. B1 as always. Let me get caller from area code 702. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Hey Jason, it's Kyle in Vegas. I just wanted to commend you on another excellent broadcast and to say that, you know, where were you 20 or 30 years ago? We were all a little young, but I'm thinking in particular about my own upbringing in Cincinnati, Ohio. My family is from South Carolina, but you know, they got chased out of there, and we ended up opening up businesses in Cincinnati, Ohio, of all places. And if you know anything about Cincinnati, it was kind of like the precursor to Silicon Valley, Cincinnati in the Dayton area. And what was happening was not only Operation Paperclip, you know, you can look that up, you know what that's about, but also, after the Immigration Act of 65 was implemented, what you started seeing were people like the scum Ramaswamy's, his parents' generation, being flooded into the tech jobs, the engineering, the professorships, everything in the Cincinnati area. I mean, you know, a town that had previously for hundreds of years been, you know, either black or white, all of a sudden it was, you know, there was a significant Indian population. And I just, you know, I now I'm realizing from basically your show what I was looking at when I was a kid in high school. You know,
it's
these kids coming in.
White supremacy, they always talk about the Chinese with their 100-year plans. White supremacy has always had 100-year plans. None of this is accidental. It can't be. They're looking forward 20, 30, 50, 100 years and saying, okay, here's how we need to remaneuver and reorganize the chessboard so that we got the game rigged. But it's never accidental. Never.
And not just at the high end, but also at the low end, because what I also noticed as a kid growing up was, you know, that was when they also started taking over the convenience stores and the hotels and the motels around the Cincinnati area, because, you know, and you know, now that I realize how the game of economics is played, you know, they were given these things that, you know, in some situations where black folks did own, you know, the hospitality venues and the gas stations and whatnot, and they were run out of business, and those places and those stores were given to the Indians, and they were given an economic scale with which to play with that they.
I mean, well, no, they didn't have any of the minuses against them. So their credit scores, they didn't bring over a credit score. They brought over refugee status. Right. They were helped by the government. They were getting housing. We've already covered that. Like, for example, after the Vietnam War, a bunch of Vietnamese refugees were dumped down in New Orleans. They didn't take them up into the Northeast. Now, they said that it was because they come from fisherman backgrounds. Okay, well, if you're going to do that, why didn't you take them up into the Northeast? They can do some lobster fishing. No, we want to put them down there in Louisiana. They can go get some shrimp down there. So this is not something new. Ever since we fought for civil rights, there's just been this never-ending campaign to destabilize us everywhere we go. And it seemed at the time, you know, this is slowly turning up the heat on the frog in the skillet. It seemed like it was a small thing at the time. Now, decades later, you realize, hell, they didn't turn on a fire hose. What they did was they just turned on the tap on your kitchen sink halfway. They just turned it on halfway and just let it keep running. Was all they did. And then you woke up a few days later and the water is at the top of the sink. You come back tomorrow, it's overflowing a little bit. You come back in a week, it's flooded the kitchen out. You come back in a month and you got water damage all over the place. So it didn't just happen overnight because they knew, well, we moved too fast. Folks are going to recognize it for what it is. They've been slow walking this thing the whole time, and now they're deep off in the paint with it. Thank you very much for giving us a call tonight. Let me get caller from area code 504. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
This is Nicola. I'm Mardi Gras in the chat though.
Okay, Nicola.
I'm calling from New Orleans.
You're Nicola calling from New Orleans, and she sounds very unsure of herself. What is on your mind?
No, because I'm having a panic attack.
That's not good.
Because I'm hearing this 500 years, and it's got me like overwhelmed. And then I'm thinking back to the previous 500 years, and I'm thinking, okay, what was going on then? Like, what was the plan then?
This is the second female caller we've had here tonight who claims she's overwhelmed. So they're having a lot of anxiety about this. Now, was that the reason? I don't know what to do. Was that the reason you called in?
No, I was listening. I had my thoughts, but the more y'all talk, the more.
That's interesting. You said that you were art. You said that you were art, and you think about aliens. Oh my God! Anyway, you said that you were art.
I'm just thinking about 500 years.
Okay, you said you were Ardell from the chat. Did you call in, or were you told to call in?
No, no one told me to call in.
Okay, that's very interesting because there was an Ardell in the chat who said something about Obama.
No, I'm Mardi Gras in the chat.
Okay, I thought you said Ardell. I said it 3 or 4 times. Y'all, she's very shook up here tonight.
I'm sorry.
Okay, well, definitely just refer back to what I said to the previous caller, the first one who called in. She had her alarm, smoke alarm chirping, and the first couple of calls. So this is not about you being scared or anxious. You can't do anything being scared or anxious. You're not here to be scared or anxious. You're here to understand. There are a lot of things in this world that can harm you. Fire, electricity, tall objects, heavy objects, sharp objects. There's a lot of things that can harm you, but you don't get up every day, at least I hope you don't, paranoid that today you're going to get burnt, electrocuted, or cut. What you learn is that I live in a world where this is where these things are, and the more aware you are, the more you manage it. Remember, 100 years ago, you didn't have, over 100 years ago, you didn't have a fully electrified, wired up country for electricity. You didn't have that. You had a bunch of folk with wood burning stoves. Hot water was wood burning. And then in each of those cases there, over the course of a couple of decades, the same households went from that to having electricity, to having hot water heaters, to having refrigerators, to having televisions, to having automobiles. And you learn to manage each of those, not to be afraid of them. So as life changes and as things change, this knowledge is being given to you so that you can make adjustments, not so you can make yourself afraid. Thank you very much for giving us a call tonight. Let me get a caller from area code 321. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Hey, Jason. My name is Antoine from Orlando, Florida. You're absolutely correct, especially with the Indian thing. Because I like history, and a lot of people don't know. In India, they got a thing. That's where the whole concept of Aryans come from. Because it goes back to India. Even the Nazis got their symbol from India, and people don't know that they got their own versions of Native Americans in India. Which, when you look them up, they're black people. I'm talking about African-looking people that live in India. That've been there before the people we call so-called Indians, and they're very anti-black to them. So it makes sense. They know what they're doing. That's why they bring a lot of Latinos, because Latinos have a huge anti-black culture down there, and so do the Indians.
Well, when you take a look at these things, these folk didn't meet these folk and just not learn anything about them. What they learned were their cultures. They learned their norms. They learned their vulnerabilities. So when they dealt with the East Indians, what white people found was, we'll be damned, they have a very well-established, very well-entrenched class culture here. They've got a very well-entrenched caste system. Well, there's a point of similarity between us right there. So they understand that every man's created equal, just some people more equal than others. So we ain't gonna have to fight with them to accept white supremacy. We just need to explain to them our understanding of it, because they already own it. Then when you move on over there to China, y'all already believe in an imperial system. You all already got that. Okay, we're going to get along just fine because we have an imperial system too. You call him emperor, we call him king. So we good about that. Okay, you believe in empire building. The Mongols, the Ming Dynasty. So, okay, you already own that. Well, you'll get along with us just fine. And everywhere you go, they look for a point of commonality, something that they can be like, okay, we're going to work with you because you understand this part of it. And now, decades later, who are their model minorities? You notice black people have never graduated to model minority status, but the Asians, both the Oriental and East Indian, the Asians came in with their model minority status. They didn't actually have to earn it. They just always have been assumed that way. So what does that tell you? It can't be because of anything they actually did. It is because of who they already were.
Just like Gandhi. When I found out Gandhi was very racist, and I just watched this show about Chippendales. I didn't know it was owned by an Indian guy. The whole time Chippendales, the guy dancing thing. And if you watch that show, it showed that he was very racist to the black dancers, even though the black dancers gave him the most money.
That's how that's how a caste system works. A caste system has absolutely nothing to do with how hard you work, how loyal to the regime you are, how little trouble you give the regime, how little trouble you give the dominant society. A caste system cares nothing for it and doesn't have a damn thing to do with that. There is nothing that you can do to elevate yourself in the eyes of the dominant society except one. Show them that you will not be their servant, nor their slave, nor their victim any longer. Now, that's the only thing that changes the way they treat you. But as far as going along to get along, and if I show them that I can be the most unproblematic cog in their machine, they'll take it easy on me. No, that never works. Never has. Never will. Thank you very much for giving us a call here tonight. Big shout out here to T. Turner and especially Ms. Green. Thank you very much for supporting tonight's program. We appreciate that. Let me get caller from area code 417. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Al from Springfield, Missouri. I want to piggyback what that last caller was saying about Gandhi. And the history of black people in East Indians has never been good at all. Going back when Gandhi referred to blacks as coffers out in South Africa, and the only black person that really saw how these people were was Idi Amin. I mean, he kicked them out of Uganda in 1971 after he was watching some of these Indian immigrants treat some of these black people and everything else. And so, as we move forward, what we're seeing, with these so-called modern people, from China and India right now, trying to make inroads back to the Caribbean and everything else, and back to Africa. It's pretty alarming. Just hope that some of these Negro leaders, will get their heads out of their asses and realize,
Well, the problem is they're part of the problem. They're lockstep with it. There is no helping them and getting their heads on straight. They're just like Sunak and Ramaswamy. They're not, on the opposite side. They are collaborators. Their job is to get us calmed down while they keep turning the heat up and twisting the knife. Your black politicians in America, as the civil rights generation has elected them, the ones that they chose, those are the handpicked, bought-off, puppeteered Negroes whose job it is to keep the rest of us calm and quiet. Don't you talk about no racism now. Don't you talk about no reparation now. You gonna make them folks mad now. Y'all need to calm all that down. And we've gone against the grain. Thank you very much for giving us a call tonight. Let me get caller code 973. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Hey, what's going on, Jason? This is Najee calling out of Edison, New Jersey. I got a question. So how much of this do you think that these outside groups are going to basically use racism as a Trojan horse to domestically undermine the United States. Because I mean, these people that are speaking are coming from groups, a nation coming from the United States that is basically aligning themselves with Russia to basically, to do away with the dollar and basically kind of neutralize.
Yeah, you all shouldn't be. You all shouldn't be too. Don't get snowed under by those things. Okay, look.
Okay.
Notice what America ain't saying. Now, if Russia was such a big bad threat right now, and if it was as bad as they claim it is, do you realize we still doing trade and every damn thing with them right now? If China was such a damn issue, we would have closed the borders and cut them off. We would have treated them like we did Al-Qaeda. If China is really this big, huge national security threat, America shows you how it treats national security threats. So there's no way that these things can be a national security threat because America's not treating it like one. Now, we've seen how they treat threats. Hell, we've seen how they treat threats domestically. Take a look what they've done to black people. They haven't done a damn thing. So I want you all to understand that what you're looking at is like the mafia. I've told you this now for over a decade. You got to understand it's like the mafia. Just like in America, white people in America understand that they're not fighting with each other over whether there will be white supremacy. There will be white supremacy. What they're only fighting over is who gets to hold the knife to cut the slices of the white supremacist cake. That's all they're arguing over. Day after day, decade after decade. I covered this in my documentary, Race War. I tried to show you all in real time. This is why it was so important to have a documentary made by us so I could show you from the principles involved. I showed you Richard Spencer and Jared Taylor didn't have a lot nice to say about each other. And you would figure, well, hell, they both feel the same way about us. Well, yeah, but that doesn't constitute a conflict between them. The conflict isn't over white supremacy. They both agree on white supremacy. Their conflict is, oh, no. Jared, you don't have the right idea. Richard, have the right idea. And Jared's like, no, Richard, you don't have the right idea. I have the right idea. That's the only conflict going on. So when you see BRICS and China and Russia, this isn't a fight over whether or not they're going to have this global system of control. It's over who's going to run it. That's all it's over. If they wanted to shut each other down, they'd be treating each other like they do Cuba. They're trying to shut that down. Iraq, they're trying to shut that down. Black folk, they're trying to shut that down. ISIS, Al-Qaeda, you're trying to shut that down. I'm not trying to shut none of this down. What they're doing is like the mafia. Every once in a while, somebody gets smacked up. Every once in a while, somebody gets smacked up. Somebody gets shot. Every once in a while that happens. You watch that happen all the way from the Black Hand to Lucky Luciano to Carlo Gambino to John Gotti to today. But you've never seen the mafia get together to shut itself down. They're not arguing over whether or not there should be a mafia. They're only arguing over whether or not how best to maintain it. So when you hear these kind of things and you hear about BRICS and they're going to challenge the dollar and whatnot, no, nobody's trying to X each other out. That's not what they're doing. What they're doing is jockeying for control, which is what they're supposed to be doing. They're just trying to leverage the best deal they can for themselves. Case in point, you remember, hey, I showed y'all China and India are a part of BRICS, and yet they got their soldiers over there shooting and killing each other on the Himalayan border today, now, right now. Happening right now, not decades ago. They added it with each other right now, and yet that is not getting in their way of setting up a global socioeconomic organization. So I just don't want you all to be deceived about what you're seeing.
Hey, Jason, you're right. But my next question will be this. If Black Americans, if we have no means to punish and reward, you know what I mean, people within our group, how are we going to basically punish people in other groups? Like, you know what I'm saying, that's doing things
untrue,
like
brother. Untrue. First and foremost, being on code. Take a look at the way we've made more progress in the last 2-3 years than the civil rights generation made in 3 decades. We made more progress since George Floyd than the civil rights generation made before that. You got folks getting locked up. You got policy on the table. You got reparations being made a mainstream conversation. We didn't wait for somebody to give us permission for that. We didn't wait for the Pastor Barber to come give us permission. Damn sure didn't wait for Roland Martin. All those folk who were working against it, and now they are born again reparationists. So just understand what progress looks like. It's slow, it's glacial, because it should have been started decades ago, and we went off on some ill-advised, fantastic voyage into integration. But recognize, brother, we have made a difference. We have made moves. And the biggest thing that's happened is being on code. A national conversation where black people start talking the same way. Or let me put this a different way. And I covered this before, but let me give you all a reminder. Now, this part I'm going to tell you is going to be kind of controversial. But when you talk about a society changing, I want you to recognize something. Do you remember what I told you were the 5 steps to Nazi Germany? Step number 1. They speak in their homes to each other, around the dinner table. The folk they know most, family, maybe a friend, but they don't really go much further than that. Next, they speak in the streets. Oh, now you going down to the church. Now you're down at the bingo hall, the barbershop. We ain't talking about pinching girls on the rump no more. We're talking about something else now. You see it, and you see it in the people that talk to you, and we've now expanded it beyond the confines of the home. It's out in the streets now. Next, the media. Now your national communication apparatus. Now you're turning on your TV, you turn on your radio. In our case, you turn on the internet and social media, and here you're hearing a fully defined black agenda that doesn't sound like it doesn't sound like integration. You got something that wasn't brought to you by the white politicians. The white politicians did not bring this agenda. We're the ones who brought that for ourselves. So that's dangerous. White society brought us integration and said, well, don't worry, if you want change, here's what it needs to be. We said, yeah, we got our own ideas. And we're not asking you. Well, you need to go to Congress and get a committee. No, we don't. We just need to stand. We need to take to the streets. If we take to the streets, it's for our agenda, and the agenda is not to pass a bill. You go ahead and talk about bills and committees. We take it to the streets tonight. Next thing you know, conversations start changing. You take to the streets. What y'all gonna do? The soldiers will be in the streets. What you gonna do, Jason, if you do arrest them or whatever? I'm bailing them straight out. They gonna be back out by morning. Hell, they'll be out tonight if I can get the bondsman to answer the phone. Next thing you know is, oh, we can't hold them. Y'all are getting organized. And not to buy a pair of damn shoes neither. So you're seeing that the national conversation has changed. Barack Obama is a cancer and a pariah. He can't get nothing done. They've had to go ahead and retire him. Him and Michelle Obama are sitting up here trying to milk their Netflix and not Spotify deals. They can't make no money on the streets. They have no black support anymore except the geriatric crowd. But 20 years later, they ain't got no support. They recognize this is a death blow. So I want you to understand, it seems minor. I know that. But you got to understand that the precursor of all action is thought and speech. And if I can get you to think about something different than you've been thinking about, and if I can get you to talk about something different than you've been talking about on a regular basis, then I damn sure know you're going to start doing things differently. You have no choice. What you think becomes your habits, and what becomes your habits becomes your life. So I suggest to you, brother, I submit to you, we're a lot further down the road than you think. And if you don't believe me, once again, like I say, don't believe me. Don't believe Jason Black. Jason might be lying. Jason might be exaggerating. Jason might be trying to blow it up bigger than it really is. Don't believe Jason Black that the situation has changed. Ask Mr. Ramaswamy. who's decided that the only thing he can do with his fortune that he's made is run for president against black people. And he's not even Caucasian. Don't believe Jason Black. Believe Mr. Ramaswamy. He said it. He's going to Jordan Peterson. He's on Meet the Press. Don't believe me. Believe him. He has no reason to lie and say that we're making the progress we are. He's the one saying he's scared to speak crazy about us. He's the one saying he's scared to go against our agenda. He's the one saying that he's scared to say he's not in support of reparations. He's the one saying that. Don't believe me. Jason could be lying to you. Okay, if Jason may be lying, then what's this guy doing saying the exact same thing I've been telling you? If we're not making any progress, why is he saying all hell's breaking loose? Thank you very much for giving us a call tonight. Brothers and sisters, don't believe me. Look at him. Did I set him up to this? Did I put him up to this? Did I pressure him into this? Did I make him do this? Is he an employee of mine? And yet he's coming back to black folk and talking about this woke thing. What is the woke thing? Anti-white supremacy. Next thing you know, he's like, this will fundamentally change everything. You damn right. Don't believe me, believe our enemies. If everything was fine, this man would be sitting on a beach somewhere, kicking it with a couple of CEOs of some corporations to go pull off another pharmaceutical scam. He's like, man, we stopping the car right here to deal with these Negroes. Caller from area code 260, you're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Hey, it's Jordan from Indiana.
Okay, Jordan, from where at in Indiana?
Fort Wayne.
Okay, what's on your mind?
Well, you told me to call back in 7 weeks when my school finished for the semester. So here's me calling back. That's point one. Point two is, I thought it was interesting that, I guess reading the headline.
Okay, Jordan, slow down for a moment. Now, sorry. I told you to call back in 7 weeks. That's what you said?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and where were you at school at?
I'm the nerdy kid you posted on there.
Well, I'm very glad you found my other YouTube channel, but this is the wrong program here. We'll be on tomorrow night, so definitely give me a call back tomorrow night. I'd like to get an update on that. Thank you very much for giving us a call. Jason been putting in a lot of work out there. I've been putting in a lot of work, so give us a call back here tomorrow, Jordan. We'll take care of that. We're doing something a little bit different here tonight. Let me get caller from area code 912. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Black Alpha Network, calling in from Savannah, Georgia.
Okay, what's on your mind?
All right, first, brother, I want to thank you for this episode and previous episodes for forecasting this 500-year plan and strategizing around it, because too many brothers and sisters forget that mascots, they still work for the team, and that team is global white supremacy. So I appreciate you for strategizing around that and let brothers and sisters know. One thing I want to make, and this is a point to your point, and I'm glad you highlighted it, too many people focus in on the hotbeds like the Texas and the Californias. Right here in Savannah, Georgia, there's places inside the town that look like El Paso, Texas. Straight like El Paso, Texas. It looks like anywhere on the border where they're bringing people in time after time again and basically elevating these buffer class and these minions above us. The question I want to have, I want to present to you, brother, is when you start talking about the 500-year plan, which we're aware of, I don't know how anybody has listened to you and not, understood what's going on. The question I want to ask you, when it comes to these different buffer classes and everybody that's coming in to elevate us, well, I guess I kind of really already agree with what you're going to probably say, but Republicans and Democrats, can you tell people how they work on the same side, as well as, these different countries? They're not going to fight each other. India, America, China, they're not going to fight each other on behalf of black people, because I try to break that down to brothers and sisters, and they tend to think that somehow America's going to fall and everybody's going to say, well, we're in it for black folks, and that's not really the case. And that's what I wanted to ask you, brother.
If you believe that anybody is in favor of black people, either inside America's government or outside or overseas in foreign governments, ask yourself one question. Where's the money? Show us where the money is. Thank you very much for giving us a call. He's gotten into a wrestling match with his phone. But show us where the money is. Tell us where the money is. Tell us where you're investing. Show us what you're spending. Because you see, when China wants to set up a Silk Road, they buy bridges and dams and construction projects in Africa. They don't give lip service. They start cutting checks. When America wants to set up shop in the Middle East, they don't bring integration and lip service. They start cutting checks. When somebody is trying to promote you, they start cutting checks. They start giving room and board. They get the money moving. So the bottom line is, you don't let anybody fool you with any of these symbolic gestures. What they offer black people, both in America and China and Russia, whenever they want to bring up racism in America and then don't want to bring up racism where they are, it's not like they're on Team Black. It's not like that's what's going on. It's not like that's what's going on. And they know what they're doing. They know what they're doing. That's all you got to ask yourself. Is very simple. You want to cut through all the clutter and all the confusion? Tell them, where's the investment? Who's cutting the check? And then all you're going to hear is symbolism where they love it. They friend. You don't want Trump to win now, do you? Call Area code 929. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Good evening, Jason. This is Daryl from Chicago.
All right, Daryl from Chicago. What's on your mind?
Jason, excellent broadcast tonight. And I just want to reiterate to all the people that are listening, they shouldn't even be worried about this, because you've been sharing information with us and giving us everything that we needed to know. And, of course, us doing our own research as well. But I want to appreciate and thank you for that. That's first thing. Second thing, you hit the nail on the head over here in Chicago. And you know I live on the south side of Chicago. And the black folks over here, we ain't moving. They've been trying to do everything they can, and it's a nice area over here, and they want that area, but they can't get it because we invested in it, and we're not moving at all. And we're taking it like it is. We're staying on code. Everybody's working together, and they see that we ain't playing with them. So we got to stay on code, and we ain't playing with nobody, and that's why we got to be from this point on. And we can change the narrative of all of these things, just like you said, but we got to stay on code with it.
Thank you very much for giving us a call tonight. Please do give us a call again. Let me get caller from area code 501. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Hi, this is Big Bird. I'm calling from Little Rock by way of Omaha, Nebraska. To contextualize my question, because you're giving us their plan. Well, I want to state my plan and see what you think of it, because I respect your opinion. My plan is to gain money off of what they're doing to us. Like, I'm a notary public, and I'm also about to get my insurance license. And my area in Little Rock has a fast-growing Latino population. I want to see what you think about me using my entrepreneurial ambitions to capitalize on the Latino community that's growing in my area.
Sure, if you can. There's no reason you shouldn't.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much for giving us a call tonight. It's that simple, y'all. Dollar's universal language. Do business with everybody. Everybody does business with us. You can walk into any Mexican restaurant you want to. You can walk in any Chinese restaurant you want to. Hell, they set them up in black neighborhoods. Do business with everybody. Just don't get confused. Caller from area code 415. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Hey, it's April calling from San Francisco. How you doing, Jason?
All right, April from San Francisco. What's on your mind?
So, yeah, another great program tonight. Kind of piggybacking off of your previous one about doctrine of discovery. From that to 9/11 to COVID or CVID, whatever, to what you're talking about tonight, it's a straight line continuum for white supremacy. And when you mentioned the the whole thing with Black wealth is going to fall to zero by 2050 something, 2080 something. That's a plan in action of returning us to slavery. That's a plan in action of eliminating us through this vaccine genocide. That's a plan of action that has been ongoing all this time. And, you know, it's just amazing that people are not seeing that. Like the whole idea that they have is take a look at Libya, what they did with Libya. Those Benghazi rebels were like the KKK, and they went after black people, black Libyans, and called them rapists and mercenaries that were not from Libya. They returned; those people were free under Gaddafi, and they had the highest wealth rate, out in the entire continent of Africa.
Well, that's because these things are global. That's how America set up its beachheads in other places. America's been doing it for decades and decades. In reality, China is just catching up to where America already was decades ago. America and Britain did their empire building. The rest of these folk are really just trying to catch up now. Thank you very much for giving us a call tonight. I'm only going to take a few more phone calls here, folks. So everybody here, I'm going to try to get you in, but keep your comments brief. Get in, and get out, or I'll help you keep it brief for you, whichever you prefer. Let me get caller from area code 937. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Yeah, my name's Calvin from Jacksonville.
Okay, Calvin from Jacksonville. What's on your mind?
This is a great broadcast. I was just wondering, because, they got a lot of hurricanes here in Florida. Do you think that would be a problem?
It hasn't been a problem. It hasn't been a problem so far, sir. It hasn't prevented anyone from wanting to build there. New York has snowstorms and floods. Not stopping anybody from building there. Exactly. So, no. Caller from area code 718, you're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
My name is Mr. Blue from New York City, the Bronx.
All right, Mr. Blue, what's on your mind?
Yes, I just want to say, first of all, thank you, Jason, for the broadcast. What we're seeing here in New York City is there are organizations and brothers and sisters that are organizing, talking about reparations, talking about critical thinking in the schools, educating our children to be codified and stay on code, and to speak about racism, white supremacy as it exists, what it is and how it works. And some of the problems that still exist is that, brothers and sisters, we have noticed, one, haven't read Neely Fuller's book, which is not a requirement, but you should understand what codification does mean. And also, when it comes to schooling and education, I'm a teacher, and we have noticed that in the New York City public school system, there is an inadequate attention towards underrepresented communities, children of color, not black and brown, but specifically black children, foundational black American children, and their critical thinking skills. And we're always trying to work towards making things better for them and having them truly understand what's going on and how to be codified in their language, their thought, speech, and action. And I just want to thank you for the broadcast. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for giving us a call. Let me get caller from area code 337. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
My name is Ren. I'm calling from Lafayette, Louisiana.
All right, Ren from Lafayette. What's on your mind?
Well, Big Brother Jason, you preach week after week, and we still don't get it. I'm in education as well as the previous caller here in Louisiana, higher education, and Louisiana is giving out free English classes to all Latinos, okay? They've been doing this for years. So all this has been programmed years in advance to set everybody up to surpass and supplant us. And we don't believe it. We don't get it, okay? At one point in time, I had 70 to 80% of all Mexicans in my class. Right now, it's about 40 or 50. That number is dropping. Why? Because they're bringing in Guatemalans, Hondurans, and everyone else. Because they know that the Mexican population is getting too high on the hog. Plus, because of what, point number two, my last point, President Obrador tipped his hand 2 weeks ago and let everybody know he wanted to go and join BRICS. Well, if Mexico joins BRICS, all the Mexicans will start coming back to Mexico because China's going to flood the entire market down there with construction and many other types of jobs. And the government knows that. We don't get it. We don't get it, Jason. And I thank you so much for doing what you do each and every week. God bless.
Well, thank you very much for giving us a call here tonight. I mean, part of the issue hasn't been that we necessarily don't get it. As black people, we've been on the outside looking in. They've had us so wrapped up just fighting for survival. They had the civil rights generation cooning the hell out, chasing religion, chasing interracial sexual access, chasing drugs, chasing bastard babyism and illegitimate babyism, chasing indulgence and consumerism. So you've had us, for the most part, being sidelined. It isn't like we've been power brokers about anything. We've been watching on the sidelines what's been going on. We're really the first generation that's really tried to get its heads on straight to say, hey, we need to grapple with what the issue actually is. But the civil rights generation, the baby boomers, World War II, they could have had this conversation decades ago. They were trying to figure out how to go along to get along. Maybe we can pacify these white supremacists. And instead, it should have been sticking on to the game plan. Caller from area code 347. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from? Okay, caller from area code 347 has been abducted. Caller from area code 708. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
It's Sean from Chicago.
All right, Sean from Chicago. What's on your mind?
So I appreciate how you highlight white supremacy the next 500 years. Black people like me is mentally enslaved by, like, let's say cigarettes, stuff like that, right? If you go into Canada, the state of Canada is like have low violence rates. If you go in Canada, they got cigarettes, but they cover them up by curtains. Or like if you go to Minnesota, they shut down a liquor store like at 12 o'clock.
Okay, Sean, what is your point, ma'am? I don't get it, ma'am. What are we talking about here?
The point is, you highlighted one time when you was talking on your broadcast how many people smoking, right? And then all the little cigarettes lit up, right? So you talked about, too, how we all use crunches. You know, we all have a crunch to something. And the crunch is these nicotine products, alcohol, stuff like that. Somebody previously said something about critical thinking. We lacking critical thinking because we keep using these crunches. So I appreciate how you highlight.
Definitely, I see how that could be an issue. However, I don't think we nearly have the cigarette use that we used to have even now. Right now, I'm more worried about the cell phones than I am about cigarettes, to be totally honest with you. I'm more concerned about people being wrapped up in their cell phones and treating social media as if that's a real place and engaging in stupidity like feminism and gender warring because they see themselves as honorary white people. So they're diminishing the really big issues and blowing up, can I be LGBT until as if it's a major issue. So I hear what you're saying, but in reality, I actually consider these other things to be a more pressing issue, to be totally honest. Thank you very much for giving us a call here tonight. Well, folks, like I say, it's been an involved program here because I wanted to go into the deep details of it. That's why you have us here as your new black media, because we can deal with this long form. I wanted to lay out the case comprehensively here tonight. I know it's been a lot to absorb, but I think it's well worth it. And I hope you get a lot out of it here. If you want, from going forward, when folk ask me what the game plan is, what I'll be doing is I'll be referencing this program to you. I'll be referencing this program, White Supremacy, the next 500 years. Next time you ask me what it is and you want all the facts and figures, you want the proof, you want the empirical data, you want the proof of how they're moving and where they're moving, this program tonight has been it. We're going to go ahead and wrap things up here. If you are new here to the Black Channel, welcome to the haven of intelligent black thought. You just saw an example tonight of what we do. Click that red subscribe button. Click that yellow notification bell. Join us each and every time that you're here. If you haven't been to our website, BlackChannelFilms.com, you want to go there and check out our groundbreaking best-selling documentary work, 7 a.m., Gentrified, Race War, all available on DVD and streaming. Go to BlackChannelFilms.com. That is BlackChannelFilms.com. I want to thank every one of you for tuning in to tonight's program, live or recorded. Thank you to everyone who has contributed to support tonight's program on PayPal, CashApp, Super Chat, Venmo. Thank all of you for liking and subscribing. And this concludes tonight's broadcast of The Black Channel. I am your host, your brother, your humble servant, the Black Authority. And until next time, my brothers and my sisters from around the world, remember, black is the future, and the future is the future.